Hey, let's start the show.
It's March 19th, 2015. Welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com.
Using an unregistered version.
Hey guys, welcome to This Is Only a Test. I'm Will. We're using an unregistered version of Soundboard because I got a new laptop and forgot to put the code in.
And when will we stop hearing about that?
Right now. I just pressed the button. I'm going to put that information in right now while we do the intro. I'm Will Smith, seated directly to my left. Norman Chan, how are you doing this morning, sir?
Hello.
Joining us as is the usual now, I think. Resting his nose on the microphone.
It's early.
Jeremy Williams.
Good morning.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm good.
What's the haps? We've seen a lot of you the last few days. Like we had an outing on Sunday.
Yep, that was fun.
That was fun.
Am I talking? Is this loud? I can't hear myself.
We can hear you. I can turn you up a little bit. I just didn't want to deafen you.
Yeah, we had a good time. We had like an electric vehicle day.
Yeah, it was a day of the future,
Right.
which I thought was kind of fun.
I expected.
And it ended exactly how a day of the future should end.
Like I drove off in an electric car.
Crashing quadcopters.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we crashed a lot of quad. Well, okay, so we went to the polo fields in Golden Gate National Park. Or I guess it's not Golden Gate National Park. It's just Golden Gate Park.
Because if it was national park,
we
we
couldn't fly
couldn't
quads there.
fly quadcopters.
Yeah.
That would be bad.
We went there. You brought your boosted board. Norm, you brought 3 or 4 quads.
I brought 3 quadcopters, I believe.
You had one FPV quad, the Phantom.
That's right.
And
And a Parrot, the Parrot Bebop.
right.
I brought the electric unicycle. Jeremy and I brought kids.
I brought my boosted board.
I brought wife.
And then
Norm
you
brought
also
girlfriend.
drove an electric car.
I drove an electric car there. Powered.
A lot of electrons going around
It was
there.
entirely powered by my own sense of self-satisfaction.
It was pretty cool.
It was a fun day.
Yeah.
So we were riding around. I didn't notice at the time because I've become immune to noticing like people reacting when I ride around that unicycle.
Really?
But she pointed out.
Guess you gotta be.
You stop noticing after a few days. I did notice somebody took a picture of me when I was riding down the street yesterday. I thought that was weird. Like people were stopping their car to get out and take a picture of the asshole on the electric unicycle in San Francisco.
Well, if you want to get points on Reddit,
So
look at this asshole. Right,
Yeah.
this is San Francisco.
there you go. But she said when we were riding the boosted board in the electric unicycle, people were stopping and staring and like pointing and going like, "Is that electric? I can't. Like that might be electric.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like they're doing anything to go."
Yeah, so I was on my boosted for this is just 5 minutes of the afternoon, but I was on my boosted holding a like an
3-axis
active gimbal.
3-axis gimbal.
Yeah,
Stabilizer.
for a GoPro, and I was shooting you on your electric unicycle.
Yes.
Self-balancing unicycle.
Yeah. So that was just an interesting. That was I would think
If only
people would stop and
if
watch.
only I had been circling with the quadcopter
Right.
at that very moment.
We'd been doing an orbital shot.
If
But
only.
we were responsible and didn't want too many things going on at once.
We had a lot of moving pieces at any given moment there. But so that was a lot of fun. South by Southwest is happening right now. Norm, are you glad you're not there? Or are you sad you're missing
sad
it?
I'm not there
Really? Because
because it's a lot of fun. A lot of stuff to see.
There's a lot of stuff to see.
Austin's a great city.
Austin's fun. I miss Austin.
Did Mondo release some prints this year?
MondoCon happens, I believe, after South
the
by
week
Southwest.
after, right?
Oh,
Or it's while music is going on, right?
okay.
That's separate. Mondo has their own conference, and that's where they do the big stuff. But last year they did have a gallery. I don't think they're doing a gallery this year at the same time. Last year they did the Disney gallery. We visited that.
Dope Winnie the Pooh print for my kid there last year. So, okay, South by Southwest is happening. Let's just jump straight into the news. There's a bunch of interesting stuff this week. Sony today is rolling out their over-the-top TV service, which is called Vue, V-U-E. It is...
Is this in the U.S. as well?
It's in several cities in the U.S. I think it's Chicago, New York, and maybe Los Angeles. I can't remember what the third city is, but it's a limited number of cities, and you connect using the PS4, PS3, I believe.
What's the Vue service exactly?
I'm opening that page right now so I can tell you. but it's fairly expensive compared to, say, Sling TV. It seems more comprehensive. It's missing ABC stuff was the big gap that I remember seeing.
So Sling TV is $20 a month, and you get channels like you get cable channels, ESPN, TBS, TNT, USA, not Comedy Central, not Discovery, not the Travel. I think you do get Food Network.
Yes.
And then AMC as well is coming soon.
So here's the stuff that's on Vue. They do broadcast local channels in the supported regions.
On Vue?
On Vue.
And are these channels broadcast live, or are these on demand?
These are, there's a virtual DVR, which is kind of what I expected with Sling that they didn't do. And then it's broadcast live, and you can record stuff to your DVR for watching later.
So how does Sony do this? Because Sling works because it's part of Dish, and Dish already gets the feeds.
I think Sony's probably has a licensing deal. Like they have lawyers, is how it works.
Well, okay, so they're just getting the same feeds, and then they're running their own. They built out new servers or to distribute.
Yeah, my hunch is that they built out an infrastructure for this service. It's not cheap is the first thing you should know.
So how much is it?
It starts at, hold on, I'm getting there.
Looks like $50.
$50, and it goes up from there. There's additional packages you can add on to.
Sounds typical for cable, but not as many stations.
It's a subset of the stations you would get on cable. It's a lot of the stuff that I actually watch, minus the ABC and Disney channels.
So what's the advantage of this over a traditional service that would also cost around $50?
That's the question I have. Like, I don't know why you would do this unless...
With this virtual DVR, can I record multiple shows at the same time?
It's unclear. It's launching today, so we'll install it and test it later and talk about it next week, probably. Actually, we're not in a supported network. I'm sorry, we can't test it.
What are the supported networks?
So the supported areas are Chicago, Philadelphia, and New York.
Okay, well, that's big areas.
So they're limiting the rollout to places that they have local network streaming capability. So you get, unlike the Sling TV, where you don't get NBC, ABC, CBS, if you're a Vue TV customer in New York, Philadelphia, or Chicago, you'll be able to watch your local stations in addition to the stuff that normally comes over the cable network. And it's a big list of channels. It's CBS, CBS Plus, Cozy, Exitos, Fox, My Network, NBC, and Telemundo, and then a bunch of cable networks as well, including AMC, Animal Planet, BET, Bravo, Adult Swim, Cartoon Network, CBS, Country Music Television. I mean, there's like 30 channels. I'm not going to read them all.
It's 53 channels for $50 a month, and then there are also upsells for $60 and $70 a month,
where you get sports and some other stuff. The $60 package is a sports edition. It's like sports networks.
Local sports, and then at $70 you get specialized like children's channels like Sprout or FXM.
Exactly.
Which I'm not sure is a children's channel. But like you said, there's no ABC or any of the Disney-owned channels, which is ESPN. So
that presumably is coming. They have hinted that it is coming.
Okay. And this works on PS4 and PS3.
And I think probably the Vita TV, if that's out here yet.
Mm-hmm. So
the requirement is a PS3 or PS4, so you'll be able to watch on an iPad, but not on the PlayStation TV, actually. So there you go. Like, the thing is, this doesn't make sense to me. Like, this isn't what I want.
No, this is not the answer to cable cutting.
Right. The big bundle for $50 a month doesn't solve the problem that I have with cable right now.
Yes, and the problem with cable right now, it's not, it's bad customer service is one thing for certain providers, but it is you can't choose, you can't get a la carte.
Right.
And we haven't seen any real a la carte model. Even Sling TV isn't really an a la carte model. HBO yes,
Now.
HBO Now is the one, but that's also $15 a month for a single quote unquote channel,
right?
With arguably some of the best programming.
I would say that that's the one thing that's worth $15 a month as a standalone channel right now, given what their TV setup is like.
And I think HBO Now, which we did talk about a little bit last week, I think it's less for people who currently have existing subscriptions and pay for, whether it's Comcast or Dish or Time Warner, and then already pay for HBO, than it is for people who already don't have cable, of which there are a lot of people, and who have Netflix, and to then buy into HBO. I think we'll get a lot. I think people are going to cut their Comcast eventually, but HBO Now is more for the people who aren't paying anything already.
Because they already have HBO Go.
We've been talking about cord cutting for 5 years now, just to be clear.
So I think there's two angles. There's cord cutting, and then there's the angle of people who either pirate or don't, or live on a very limited free only subscription. And what's the phrase for that?
Freegans?
No, but what's the phrase for getting them to buy into limited?
I don't think there is one.
Well, I think there should be one, because I think a lot of these services are for those people.
I mean, that's an interesting point, because a lot the argument has always been that the market isn't providing the content at the price point that people who are pirating want. And I mean, I think the rise of Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Video kind of are the counter to that. Because if you look at, if somebody's not willing to pay $8 a month or $10 a month, whatever it is Netflix charges now for, what is a small selection of really high quality content and then basically infinite other stuff, there's not a better deal than Netflix or Amazon Prime Video for people who want to pay for stuff. But just can't, because it's either too expensive or it's inconvenient.
Have you seen an influx? You feel like there's an influx of Netflix original or exclusive programming lately? I feel like there definitely has been.
I mean, I still watch Orange is the New Black and House of Cards, but
House of Cards
is done.
One
more season?
Without spoiling,
Okay.
I think that it's a very expensive show to make, but that's obviously one of their flagship shows. It's their Game of Thrones.
Right.
And Orange is the New Black is an original series they picked up and hugely successful. But I've seen an influx of documentaries that are Netflix exclusive, comedy specials that are Netflix, especially a lot of comedy specials. Aziz Ansari's latest comedy special, which I think, the models for comedians, if you're someone like Aziz Ansari, Louis C.K., is one go with the quote unquote traditional model is HBO special.
So sell it to HBO.
Will sell you, and that's like, when you've done your tour, several times, and you want to make it more widely available.
Well, it's when you retire the material, right? Like Louis C.K. has talked about that in the past.
But Louis C.K. is different because he retires way more frequently than comedians had traditionally done. We talk about the old Seinfeld and Carlin models, and the Chris Rock models. They did several years of a tour, or at least a year, and then they quote unquote retire it with HBO. Comedians now have the option of self-distributing, which Louis C.K. has been successful in doing.
And I think Aziz Ansari did as well, right?
And then also with Netflix, obviously they have allocated a ton of money. Eventually it's going to get more expensive for them to license content, for TV shows, movies, and people are going to eventually watch a lot of that back catalog. And to get people to keep on subscribing, they need to have original content. So they have comedy specials, but also Netflix picks up shows that no one else picks up. And I think that's the wrong way to do it.
You mean they pick up pilots that other networks rejected?
Yes.
For example?
Last week or 2 weeks ago, new show on Netflix, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Tina Fey produced show. And
this is the show with the great opening theme song.
With the auto-tuned opening theme song. And if you look at the history of the production of that show, it was an NBC show. NBC paid for it and ordered a season and produced 13 episodes, and then decided it maybe wasn't good enough for NBC.
Actually, this is the one that they said, "Hey, we don't have a place to put, right? We don't have a comedy block to put this in, so it'll die.
It'll die, or it wasn't good enough for their comedy block."
I know, dude. They don't have it. They said there was an article about this. They explicitly said we don't have a comedy block. We don't have a place to put it. It will die.
I'm gonna say if it's good enough.
Yeah, if the show was good enough.
If the show was good enough, they'd find a place.
Or if they thought it was, but it's a huge hit. People love it.
I'll tell you, watching that show, I don't like it.
Oh, you don't like it? Oh, I've heard.
I know it's been well reviewed.
Yeah,
but the feeling I get when I watch a show on HBO.
Did you like 30 Rock?
I love 30 Rock.
Right.
And I think it kind of have elements of that 30 Rock comedy. But I think my problem with it is that it was a show not conceived of and produced from start to finish as a Netflix show, which a show like Orange is the New Black was.
Now, how does that
change
change things?
And I think it makes it tamer.
Because you don't have to worry about time constraints?
Not just time constraints, but the rules of broadcast television and what you're appealing to, trying to get ratings, building the show for ratings as opposed to building a show when the people are already bought in, and you can do more serialized storytelling or more edgy, quote unquote edgier storytelling, or binge and the whole binge thing. I think this show is not very bingeable. It's produced like a show people watch once a week.
Really?
Which I think it's interesting from a content producing standpoint. Like shows are written differently when they are a Game of Thrones and House of Cards type show.
But presumably this is a show that NBC didn't pay for production beyond a pilot. So the first episode would be the NBC production and the rest of it would be the Netflix, right? Or do we know that?
I think that NBC had paid for the whole season and Netflix bought the rights to 2 seasons.
Okay.
And the second season will probably, and maybe it'll get, I mean, the Netflix, one of the smartest thing Netflix has done, and like, here's a interesting thing, like HBO and other networks had the option to buy House of Cards. They shopped it around, and Netflix paid a ton of money. It's like I think $100 million a season or something for House of Cards. And the question is, why didn't like an HBO pick it up? And HBO's business model is similar to Netflix business model in that they maybe don't need it because they have a show that costs that much that fills that role. The anchors it every year,
so
Game of Thrones.
The thing that we've learned from working with people who programmed TV in past lives is that like 2/3 of the TV programming seems to be matching up the show with the show that goes before it. Because still, even in 2015, a lot of people just don't change the channel after they watch something that they like. So, for example, if you look at American Idol and the demographics for that, and House is a Venn diagram that lives inside the American Idol circle. If you put House on immediately following, a lot of people just keep watching House, and as a result, that show will become successful. So Netflix doesn't have that. Like, all Netflix has is the homepage promotion, or it's the first House of Cards or Orange is the New Black or whatever they're pushing is literally the first thing you see every time you launch Netflix.
Netflix has a autoplay for next episode.
Right.
That's their quote unquote equivalent, but it's not the same.
It's not the same.
It's more for binge. It's more to get people hooked on a specific show as opposed to a block of shows, and a block of 3 or 4 shows.
Yeah, it doesn't let them cross promote at all, which is, I think, a mistake on their part.
They do the cross promotion in that there's a recommended block when you finish an episode. Like, these are 3 other things you might like, but doesn't have the same compelling you to, like, it's not television where as the credits roll in the previous show,
right,
you're starting the cold open for the next show.
The thing that I don't understand about what they're doing is, like, I don't understand why they don't do the thing that HBO does with HBO Go, where when you start an episode of Veep, you see the preview, the promo for Game of Thrones or whatever. It's usually something that's very cleverly shot, and it's appropriate for the audience of the show that's going on. So they don't show, a bunch of nudity on Veep probably, but they do have, foul language and all that stuff. And it works really well. It makes me want to watch the shows.
And I'll tell you, on HBO, because that is not on demand, that is once every week, and it's it is appointment television, because you've made the appointment with your friends, or and I'm not saying HBO, even with HBO, but more so the live stuff. When you've made the appointment on Sunday nights to watch Game of Thrones, you're already committed to watching the trailers in front. When you are watching purely on demand, as is the Netflix model, I think, and I don't know if data backs this up, but I would bet the data would bet this up, is that people have little tolerance for anything that gets in the way of their click and watch content.
So for me,
it's the same thing with YouTube ads.
Fair enough, and like Hulu is the natural endpoint of that as a bad user experience. But I think the HBO stuff works because it helps me, as somebody who doesn't know when the new season of Game of Thrones is going to be on. It helps me know that just by doing something I would do otherwise, and they're really short bits too. They're like 15 seconds usually.
It's also a branding thing. HBO has done a really good thing of when you buy into HBO, you buy into a certain level of quality because that's their messaging.
Right.
We produce excellent quality shows, and that's not maybe necessarily the case because many HBO shows do half a season, 1 season, and don't find an audience, or they drag on like the Newsroom. But on Netflix, I think there are still. I think that if you look at some of the if you look at House of Cards and Orange is the New Black, which are 2 fantastic shows and won a lot of awards, they want to be at the HBO level where people are like, okay, maybe I don't care about that back catalog, that's the gravy, but I'm paying $7 a month, maybe $10 a month eventually for the content that they are producing, they're curating, and they're putting money into. I think producing shows that are leftover shows from other networks hurts that.
Well,
if it's not good enough.
So there's another thing that you touched on earlier that HBO did really, really well in the early days of HBO and has kind of backed away from a little bit as they've gotten bigger. But they used to be a fantastic place to watch literally the best documentaries that are made at any given time. And I don't feel like that's the case as much anymore, probably because there's a little more competition in the purchasing documentary space. I think for a long time it was basically them and like Discovery Channel and a handful of smaller networks. But Netflix, like I love the curated Netflix documentary section, right?
They probably have the best collection of documentaries out there.
Yeah, you know you're going to find something interesting.
And that's because documentaries it's a type of film, one of the type of film media that's independent, that you can do a really well-produced independent documentary that doesn't get a lot of play.
And doesn't cost a ton to make.
Doesn't cost a ton to make, and they make the festival circuits, and there's no home for them outside of the old DVD release. And getting an actual DVD Blu release is expensive.
Yeah.
And so it's cheap for Netflix to pick those up. There are networks, like streaming networks that are devoted just to that.
There are YouTube channels that have nothing but full-length documentaries on them.
Right, but in terms of the festival circuit, Fandor is a website, fandor.com, that specifically licenses independent films and documentaries and old movies that make the festival circuit, and foreign films that you would not see even on a Netflix.
Yeah. So anyway, the Vue, I don't know how we ended up talking about Netflix for 20 minutes, but the Vue service...
Probably because it's more interesting.
I think probably so, yeah.
Well, and there's Amazon, they're very successful, transparent. This past year, Yahoo has Community now, the new season. So everyone's...
Norm, you have to say Yahoo the right way.
Yahoo exclamation mark has Community, and there's everyone wants to be in the media game, to take your $7 to $10 a month.
Yeah.
Do you know anyone who pays for the Amazon streaming beyond the Prime membership?
You mean like does on-demand video?
Yeah.
No, I never buy stuff from Amazon.
No, just curious.
And you know what? I bet Amazon. Oh, they do have some selection. I think I've done it like twice, and it's only not because I'm browsing on Amazon.
Is that right?
It's only because can I stream.it? Can I stream it?
Yeah.
Says that this thing can only be rented on Amazon.
Right. That's the only time I use that. The thing I have been using more often for like rental movies is Xbox. It's usually $1 cheaper than Apple TV, and the video quality it's quite good these days. Yeah. And like it turns out with Plex and HBO Go and Netflix and Hulu and Amazon all on Xbox, that's kind of the place that I'm doing most of my like on-demand video watching these days.
Is the Vue 4K by any chance?
I'm sure it's just 1080p right
Because that would be great.
As a seller of 4K TVs, you would think that Sony would be promoting a 4K
This is why I wondered.
streaming service, but I don't think the networks aren't broadcasting in 4K, so there's nothing for them to send.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Some Netflix has 4K, but you need to have the right player to do it. And I think right now NVIDIA's upcoming Shield is one of the few players that does all the content DRM that satisfies Netflix's
the
4K requirements.
The problem with 4K right now is that the bandwidth that most people have coming into their houses is barely sufficient for you need a massive amount of bandwidth coming in for a good 4K stream.
What do you need?
I would think it's on the order of a lightly compressed 1080p stream. So if you think about it with H.264, I think it's probably 15, 20 megabits.
What? Are you serious?
Well, Netflix's 4K streams at 15.6 megabits.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you think about that,
So that's downloading at 2 megabytes a second if you
Yeah.
want to. But most people who have even crappy Comcast internet get
25.
10
but
to
you
14,
lose 10%
no problem.
for the overhead and all that. The thing that's interesting about that is that broadcast over the air HDTV in 1080p, which looks great, usually broadcasts about 20 megabits a second, and that's MPEG-2
That's MPEG-2.
lightly compressed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Blu-ray is at 1080p. Blu-ray is about 40 megabits per second.
Yeah.
30 to 40.
That actually, as somebody who's ripped a lot of Blu-rays lately, that varies really wildly based on who mastered the disc. There are definitely like if you look at the Lord of the Rings discs and the Hobbit discs, those are enormous bitrate videos coming out of the disc. If you look at especially back catalog stuff like original X-Men and old Tobey Maguire Spider-Man and stuff like that, those videos have much lower bit rates.
Did they do that because they were lazy or because they needed to fit on a smaller disc?
There's 3 different video codecs, I think, that are supported by Blu-ray, and then a bunch of subsets, and the VC1 stuff is always the low bit rate. So VC1 is the WMA variant, I think. I can't remember, but it is inferior to H.264.
I believe animation requires less for the same amount of detail.
2D cell animation requires a little lower bit rate, but 3D animation, it seems to be about the same. So anyway, this is all anecdotal from my Blu-ray ripping adventures. Windows 10 is going to be released this summer. Microsoft's making it free for pirates. So already, if you are a Windows 7 or 8 user, you'll get a free upgrade to 10.
7, 8, 8.1
for a year. Isn't that right?
There's 8 and 8.1 can upgrade indefinitely.
only 1 year.
Oh, it's only 1 year now.
1 year.
So when they originally said it was only a year for 7, and then 8 was indefinite, or it was unclear. Maybe
it was unclear, and Terry Myerson said, "Happy to have the promotion for 1 year for 7, 8, and 8.1."
I mean, that seems great.
Which doesn't mean that they can't extend that at some point if it's highly successful,
right?
But at a point where 1 year later, new PCs will be shipping, presumably with Windows 10, and you're going to have huge adoption in that first year.
Yeah.
The amount of money they would be making from stragglers to upgrade would be, I think, inconsequential.
Well, just to be clear, I mean, here's the secret of Windows has always been that the upgrade market has always been a tiny, tiny percentage of Windows sales. Like the retail copies that have been in Best Buy and Walmart and Target, that's less than 10%, even in the heyday of Windows upgrades with like 98 to ME to Windows 2000 to XP. So like making it free is a shockingly smart goodwill gesture for Windows users, and I think like I don't see any downside to them letting people who pirated Windows get free copies. It potentially could get them hooked on having legit copies of Windows.
Well, I'll say this: you probably need to register for an account.
Well, yeah, they want Windows Live accounts.
They want people to sign up for accounts where they can either send emails, or when you're using Windows, then you might eventually buy something, buy movies, buy
Skype,
buy applications,
OneDrive, or yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the thing is, if they get you hooked on the version of Windows that has the services integrated, which will be turned off on the pirated versions, I'm sure, then it encourages you to buy an upgrade in the future. This is also smart because it lets them reset the customer's expectation for the price of Windows and the market's expectation for the price of Windows. So 10 years ago, Windows for $200 made sense because you needed it to work. Now our expectation is that operating systems should be inexpensive or free, and this lets them reset the price of Windows to say $30 for Windows 11 or whatever the next version is going to be called, and helps them reset with shareholders as well.
And it's coming this summer.
And it's not going to be free for OEMs, obviously. I mean, HP and those guys are still having to pay. So,
some amount.
Yeah.
So, coming this summer. That's soon.
Summer is like
that's
3 months away.
We all thought October, like
that's the
7 and
tradition.
8,
yeah,
but they don't need to have a big rollout Windows upgrade party.
The last summer rollout that I remember was either ME or 95. 95 shipped in August, and ME I think shipped in September.
Well, let's hope that it's more like 95 than ME.
You think they'll do a public release candidate?
I would assume so. I mean, I think they laid off a bunch of Windows testers a few months ago in that round of layoffs. So I think that they have to do a public release, beta release.
And given that you can get a preview now, and they just did a new preview, they said that they're increasing the rate of previews. So I'm sure that it's getting close to what the final one's going to be like. If
they do a preview, it would be really nice if they roll it out as if they say, usually when they do a preview, beta release, whatever, it's something that you're not supposed to upgrade to the final. It would be nice if they make it upgradable to the final and just say that from the beginning.
Oh yeah, that'd be good.
There could be some limitations.
I mean, there's always
fundamental limitations.
Always a chance. Other interesting note that came out of all this talk is that there is going to be a 32-bit version of Windows 10. I don't know why you would want to have a 32-bit version of Windows 10 unless you're running some ancient legacy app that just doesn't work and you need it for like some big corporate application or something. But you can continue getting 32-bit Windows for at least the next couple of years. The 9to5 Mac had, I assume this was a leak. It was unclear from the article about the Apple Store's retail plans for the watch. So starting on April 10, the day that you can pre-order the watch, you can go to the store, make an appointment for a 15-minute try-on to try on the different bands and styles to see which watch you want, and then pre-order it on the spot. Or if you already know which one you want, you can just cut the line and go straight to the pre-order right now line.
So that's also the pre-order day that you can go online? That's the pre-order
day, yeah.
So they're asking people not to go online and pre-order, but to make an appointment if that's what you want to do.
It seems like the thing. I mean, I think they want to avoid returns is the idea.
That's good for them,
Yeah.
but then you do risk the getting it on as soon as you can.
People are going to pre-order without sight in the scene.
Yeah.
It's just like with any Apple product. There's going to be like a small window of being able to pre-order and get it on release day.
You think that, but I mean, who knows? I mean, I think the more expensive the watch gets,
You
the
guys
more
can
likely
wait.
you are to get it on release day. And my hunch, I'm going to ask a question here. I think I have an idea what the answer is, but do you think that they're going to prioritize the less expensive watches or the more expensive watches if stuff's supply constrained?
What do you mean prioritize?
So are they going to take orders and fulfill them in the order in which they're received? Or are they going to fill the $10,000 watches first, and then the $1,000 watches, and then the $750 watches, and then the $500 watches?
I don't understand the question. I mean, Apple's fulfillment is light speed, so it's whatever they have in stock is going to be able to ship.
Well, but I guess what I'm saying is if they're supply constrained on something, they're going to put the parts that are supply constrained to the more expensive models before they go to the less expensive models.
I think
You
their
think so?
supply constraints will be more about the manufacturing processes than the internal components.
Yeah.
And
So you think it's the actual shells?
I think that since the two primary shells, the steel and aluminum ones, are fundamentally different processes,
It's going to be a matter of did they anticipate the right numbers for
Yes.
each
Yeah.
SKU.
it's not going to be an allocation based on demand.
Well, but
they've already made the allocation. Which they have. I mean, this is new territory for them, but I presume they'll be pretty good about
They've
that.
never had a product with this many variables.
Well, of course.
So
Presumably, with a 14-day lead between the pre-order day and the release day, that actually is in Apple's supply chain timeline enough to make significant shifts if they need to. I mean, the life of a MacBook is like 6 days from the time that the aluminum comes into the factory and the laptop goes out. It's crazy. It's really fast.
I can't believe we're skipping the biggest story of the week.
oh my gosh.
To talk about Apple Watch.
It's in alphabetical order. You want to talk about the higher price point for the Vive? Is that
No,
the big
I
one?
want to talk about what's on the top of the page.
Oh, I think the
Jesus.
Nintendo. Oh,
No, I think the biggest, most interesting thing this week. Let's stop talking about the watch pre-sales.
okay.
And
You want to talk about the Carbon 3D printer?
I want to talk about the Carbon 3D printer.
Okay.
I think it's absolutely the easiest.
It's cool.
The most interesting
It's not a
technology
product
story
yet.
this week. Not a
So
product.
yeah,
yet.
it looked vapory to me. Is
I
what I
would say
initially thought.
not vapor. I if I could pre-order this right now, I would do it.
You're a believer.
I'm a believer.
All right. What is it?
Carbon 3D company made an announcement at this year's TED conference where
all good products are released.
where many products are now are being announced, and maybe that's good or bad. I don't. That's TED politics.
I'm kicking myself for not announcing Game Frame there.
No,
You should have done that, man.
One step up. But they've been working for several years now, 2 years now, with capital, with an investment from Sequoia Capital. So they have money. It's not just like dudes in a lab. And they have a 3D printer that's they're claiming is a step up from SLA. So right now, there are three known 3D printing technologies.
Well, there's more than that.
Three commonly known 3D printing technologies among enthusiasts. FDM is the one that we're most familiar with. Fused deposition modeling, which is the melted plastic layer by layer, your maker bots, your printer bots. That's top down.
That's what you guys do here.
Absolutely. And that one is, well, it's the most consumer, maybe like accessible. I want to say
It's something you can do at home. You can take the RepRap designs are all FDM printers, or almost all FDM printers. And if you can make a 2D printer, it's basically taking a 2D printer and adding a couple of extra axes and some software to control them. So you with Arduinos and good stepper motors and some finely machined rods, you can make an FDM printer at home.
And importantly, the filament is cheap and there's no cleanup.
Right.
We're talking filament, just
Cheap and non-toxic also. I mean, you can do PLA filament, which is like it's made of cornstarch.
So the other two ones, we'll go at the other end first. SLS is more of the high end. That's
It's laser sintering something.
Yeah, selective laser sintering. And that's the one that you get the chalky, powdery, when you think of shapeways.
Yeah, if you look at the neat thing about SLS is you can do print in place mechanisms because you can because you have a very fine control over the resolution of the print. You can actually print air gaps and stuff, and the material is supported by the bucket of
That's huge.
powder that it's in.
Yeah.
So overhangs are no problem. You can do all sorts of really cool stuff.
Like weird geometric shapes. I mean,
Yeah.
we have that the virus model that somewhere in the office over there. Like really cool things, but the prints are maybe a little more fragile because they can snap.
Both of these have structural problems. I mean, the FDM
Different
stuff
types of structural
has
problems.
a shearing problem where it's really strong on the compressive layer on the against the z-axis it was printed on, but if you hit it on the x or y axes, usually the layers just break apart.
You can
with any kind of force.
twist them apart, and then the SLS ones
They're fragile.
They're fragile. They can shatter.
Yeah.
And then there's SLA, which is kind of this middle road where it's using curing resin, using lasers.
So this is what the Form 1 uses.
Form
It's
1.
the Spark from Autodesk.
Yep. And that's from a pool of resin, and the platform actually is inverted, where the platform rises out of the resin, and then the resin is selectively cured by lasers. So technically, it's still layer by layer, but what you get is a more structurally sound plastic piece.
Actually, it's not that. That's not it. The layers are very small, so imperceptible layers.
It's like a
Imperceptible,
higher resolution of FDM.
But they're still really fragile prints, and because because the resin is UV reactive, you have to apply a clear coat or something that's going to block UV, or else the material breaks down over time.
And then there's a curing process. I mean, there's a cleaning process after it comes out. But that's like from the vat. This 3D printer from Carbon 3D is a version of SLA. So it's still a pool of resin, but instead of using a laser to do just the curing, they're also putting the light in the bottom through an oxygen window. And what that does, and I'm not exactly sure how
Explain
this
the
works.
physics to me, Norm.
I don't know. I don't know the physics. I'm not a scientist. What they claim that does is that it allows them to selectively not only cure the resin, but also inhibit the curing with the oxygen.
Now, why do I want the cure to be inhibited?
Because they're not. If you're using a laser, you can be very precise, but I don't think they're using a laser.
Okay.
They're using a big light, a big projector on the bottom, and so they get bigger area and more curing at once, and so it's not as precise as the laser, but to compensate for that, they infuse the oxygen in there to diffuse.
So basically, they're using the oxygen as a negative to bubble up through and block the UV from the dark, what should be the uncured parts of the plate. Mm-hmm. This all seems like vapor to me still.
So the demos they've shown and the videos they've shown, it looks a lot like SLA.
Have people seen this running in real life, or have they just seen videos?
I think very
They have it
selective
at
press
TED?
had at 10 people have selective access.
Okay.
They say it's 25 to 100% faster than FDM. I don't know how that compares to SLA. SLA is
SLA is slow.
It's a slow process. The video they showed, which was running at 7 times real speed, was still much faster than SLA.
Yeah, so the video that they have is of the Eiffel Tower coming out of the print upside down,
Which you shouldn't take as that being real time. I think a lot of people are confused.
Yeah, they don't explicitly say that, which is
I think the other video, the one we made it says 7x on the bottom.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
That was with a piece of geometry, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah, the one that they have, it's called Carbon 3D's super fast 3D printer printing an Eiffel Tower, implies strongly that it's printing the Eiffel Tower in about 4 minutes. Which is
for that type of piece is still amazing.
Oh, it's incredible.
We're talking about like 5 to 10 minute print for that complexity. But they also claim that because of their curing process, it's structurally more sound than SLA.
And are they claiming that the layer heights are on par with SLA resolution?
That's a good
There's
question.
a lot of good questions.
So and that's one of these things that I think we're talking about prototyping still, right? So the resolution, structural integrity, all of these matter only to a certain extent. But when you're talking about making prototypes, one of the things that does matter the most is speed and the fidelity and speed ratio.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't think they're making things that you want. I mean, we're not going to get. It doesn't make sense to 3D print something that you're going to use, as a final object with something like this. There are other processes that may be better for that. Mold making, casting, but for rapid prototyping,
or for making negatives or positives for mold making or casting, something like this is incredible.
It could be incredible.
A lot of this, the thing that we've found by talking to people who actually use 3D printing in a professional capacity is that most people aren't interested in 3D printing things that are going to be used outside of like, you know, things like the Steam controller, like the ones that they handed out at Steam Dev Days were all 3D printed casings because they wanted to have something they could give people quickly and didn't want to go to the expense of making a mold or something like that. I mean, you know how expensive it is to do injection molds.
Yeah.
So
5 figures.
Yeah, it's crazy expensive. So when you're looking to make, say, 300 of something, it may be easier to run off a few hundred on 3D printers or rent 3D printer time. The people who are using 3D printers to actually prototype things are then taking those molds and using them to make negatives or make positives, so they can kind of bypass a lot of the time consuming and expensive part of casting, you know, of doing injection molds. So then either they do silicone molds or something like that, like Frank has taught us how to do, or there's a bunch of other different ways you can do this stuff. But I'm interested in this. I want to see it running in person.
Yep.
I don't believe anything I see in YouTube videos at this point.
But one interesting aspect you told me is that unlike other SLA printers, this does not require a cleanup phase.
That's right. That's one of the things they said.
That's cool.
Yeah, it doesn't require a cleanup phase. Limitations that people have said, from the old demos, it seems like because a lot of it's based on projector and you need the even projector lighting, the focus projector, it is limited. That limits the build platform, the pool size.
It has to be small, right?
Has to be kind of small, unless they get more projectors or build that system in. But I think what they want to demo is this as an alternative technique for curing the resin, and then build on that.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is going to be. I don't know if it's even smart for them to even make this consumer product as their goal.
Yeah.
This could be build the $50,000 machine first, sell a ton of those, and then eventually figure out the process and get it down to consumer product.
This is a thing that 3D Systems or Stratasys or somebody will buy if it is a promising technology.
I don't think they have enough money. I think if they're getting venture capital,
They took $41 million so far.
Dude, what?
That's
Carbon 3D?
Yeah,
that's a fuck ton of money
it is a fuck ton of money.
for evaluation.
Depends on the valuations. Don't matter.
I'm
The
saying
point
that-
is what somebody's willing to pay and what the people who put the 41. If the 41 million people can get 250 million out of it now,
Then that's a crazy amount of money. I think
if this changes the way if this overnight makes SLA and FDM printing obsolete and is patentable, then Stratasys or 3D Systems is going to buy them.
or want to,
Or
but
try
whether they can, I think
The fact whether they can or not depends on how much money
these people think they can make.
these people think they can make, and more importantly, the investors think they can make, because the people, at the end of the day, probably don't matter as much as the guys who chucked over $41 million.
Sure. Yeah.
This is a materials thing. I mean, the technology for the printer side is interesting. The material stuff is the real magic. Because if they're doing the oxygen, if they're using oxygen toward the photolithography process, then that means the resin is the special sauce. The printer is easy. The resin is special. I mean, it's not easy.
It is a combination of different type of resin.
And the question is
differently.
that has a whole other set of questions, like how does the resin hold up? Is it really something you can have no cleaning phase on? I mean, I know that I don't want to handle the SLA resin without gloves on. It smells bad to the point that you know that you don't want to have it on your skin.
Like I'm saying, it's for prototyping.
And can they manufacture the resin in enough quantity to fulfill demand? Because this printer is useless without the special resin.
So. And even things like the Form 1, you got to buy them. You got to buy a lot of tubes.
Yeah, I mean, at least the Form 1 uses normal SLA resin though, so you can theoretically, and when there's enough market, there will be like there is now with PLA and ABS filament. You can get that anywhere. You can get it from Amazon. You don't have to buy it direct from MakerBot like we did 4 years ago. So you know, it all depends on whether you can get the resin and whether they can manufacture it in quantity to suit demand.
I am super interested. I mean, like we've talked about limitations of FDM for so long, and companies like MakerBot have kind of stuck to that path.
Well, and talking to Sean, the SLA stuff has a different set of equally challenging limitations.
Yep.
I don't think that this is going to not have limitations. This doesn't, you're still going to have the problem sticking the model onto the platform and all the same problems that Sean's found with the SLA stuff.
But it still
there's
has
no magic bullet. I'm saying it's a completely different angle that we haven't seen before.
It still has all the same overhang problems as FDM.
And as SDS,
SLA, where you got to build an
It's
angle.
just upside down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, but it's easier to solve the overhang problems with support material when it's hanging upside down than it is when it's hanging right side up.
Why?
Because the pieces that need to support it are thinner. You don't have to build onto a rail. Imagine building a mobile versus building a bridge. So your arches for the bridge have to be fairly big. When you're doing a mobile, you can just do a monofilament line and it'll hold it up.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't think of 3D printing as a materials problem to solve, more as a process, but it is way more. I mean, the process is all informed by the materials.
So many of the interesting problems of the 21st century are materials problems.
Plastics.
Yeah, it's the future. So I mean, we've reached out to them. We'll see more as soon as we can, as soon as they're ready to show stuff, I hope. Nintendo, this is huge news.
It is.
We've talked about this for, let's say, since the iPhone was launched now. Nintendo announced that they're going to do smartphone games featuring Nintendo characters designed mostly in-house, and they're partnering with a company called DNA.
So I think it's
DNA. Okay.
Spelled DE. So DNA.
My autocorrect kept changing this to DEDNS, which is a really dumb name.
DNA, which is a big publisher of mobile games in Japan.
Well, in the US. So they do a lot of Disney and Star Wars stuff. Like those free-to-play Disney, Star Wars, and Marvel games are all DEDNA.
Nintendo says no ports.
No ports.
No ports. Games developed in-house.
No ports is good. Just to be clear,
yes.
I don't want touchpad control. I don't want you to do touchscreens to play Super Mario Brothers. It's going to be fucking terrible. So you want to have a game that's designed to work with the platform.
I really think this is too little, too late. It would absolutely make them some money, but I think the strength of their characters.
I don't think so. If they make good games, these are going to be massive sellers. Because every kid likes both Mario and the iPad. Every
It's
kid.
true.
Every kid.
It's true.
Universal.
They said that they are announcing. They tease the next console, the Wii U follow up.
Yeah, the NX
will be a new the NX next generation system, whatever it's called, and it will have a new control, a new paradigm, just like the last few have had.
So hold on, what was this? I'm sorry, I was reading about Nintendo's stock.
In announcing the DNA partnership, they also said that they are working on a new console. Oh, right. And we'll have it'll be a new approach.
Well, so if you think about that, I hadn't really considered it, but Nintendo has been very innovative in control schemes, especially over the years. They were the first people to ship an analog stick with the N64 and that weird tri-controller.
They invented the D-pad, dude.
Right, they invented the D-pad. I mean, they invented the gamepad, just to be clear. When they invented the D-pad, that was the invention of the gamepad. The GameCube, while the controller wasn't particularly innovative, it's still one of my all-time favorite game controllers. That it's really comfortable in your hand. Yeah.
Love it. Also, shoulder buttons.
Shoulder buttons were there. Well, but we had shoulder buttons on that generation from PlayStation.
The SNES had shoulder buttons.
That's true.
Yep.
That's true. And then the motion stuff with the Wii and all that. I don't think anybody's surprised that they're working on a new console, given the sales on the Wii U. The 3DS is still doing really well. The new 3DS is sold well in Japan and the US. I don't know about Europe yet. And their stock is up 25% 2 days in a row.
Holy cow! Are you serious?
Yeah. Like they've had two massive spikes at least since this announcement. This was on
consumer confidence, investor confidence.
So I mean, here's the thing: Nintendo's not in dire straits. They've had the Wii U has been a failure, even though it's been a kind of critical success with the software that came out in the last 2 years. But I mean, the 3DS is still making enough money. It's not as big a success as the DS was, but it's still making money, which is, they're not, Nintendo's not going away. They're not like Sony. It's not like they're in a they're divesting of different divisions and stuff like that. I think this is a forward-looking, this is them hedging their bets that, if handheld mobile games like the 3DS and the Vita continue to wane, especially in Japan, where by all reports kids just play Puzzle and Dragon now. It's smart for them to get their franchises on those platforms where they can make money there. If they don't do that, they're leaving money on the table.
We've been saying that forever.
Yeah,
I just never thought they'd do it.
So the thing that's worrisome. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say they have released Mario games for third-party platforms in the past, but it's been a very long time.
When? Oh, for 3DO? There was a Zelda for 3DO, right?
That sounds right. I was actually looking on Wikipedia trying to find them. I don't remember what they were. That sounds right. But I do remember most of the times that they've done this, they have not been terribly successful.
Yeah.
Mario teaches typing.
I mean, partnerships are tough. The interesting thing about this was that Iwata said they're developing most of the stuff in-house. They're consulting with DNA on payment modeling. They're not ruling out free-to-play modeling, but he explicitly says, this is in a Time interview about this announcement. Iwata says, I understand that unlike the package model for dedicated game systems, the free-to-start type of business model is more widely adopted for games on smart devices, and it will naturally be an option for us to consider. On the other hand, the business model continues to change. Accordingly, for each title, we will discuss with DNA and decide the most appropriate payment method. So specifically to your question, which was, hey, what about free-to-play? Both can be options, and if a new Nintendo-like innovation comes of it, then all the better. On the other hand, Nintendo does not intend to choose payment methods that will hurt our brand image or our IP, which parents feel comfortable letting their children play with. So presumably we're not going to see Smurf Village type situation where kids rack up $600 or $1,000 of free-to-play transactions and get everyone involved in trouble. I'm really interested in this. I would love to see some Nintendo designed games for smartphones. I think that could revitalize, like right now when you go to the App Store on iOS or Android and look at the games that are out there, it's really hard to find something that I'm going to be compelled and interested in playing. And
quality control is something that's going to be important to them, and I think that the mistake they could make is not charging enough for their games.
Well, I mean, there's two ways to look at that, though. Look, Square Enix does this. Actually, Square Enix does this pretty well. They have a partnership with this company as well.
Oh, really?
And they release some games that are free to play, and then they also release ports of like old Final Fantasy and Chrono Trigger and stuff like that for high premium App Store prices. I think the Final Fantasy games are still $15 a pop, sometimes 20. So I mean, that like this is. Like if we have a model that rides somewhere in between, and I would like to see some of the games that do make sense with non-Twitch controls ported over. Like I think any of the turn-based stuff that Nintendo's released over the years, the Super Mario RPGs and all that, there's no reason you couldn't play that on a smartphone or adapt it to work on a smartphone.
No ports.
No ports, I know. So yeah, I mean, I think this is, they say they're building a joint development structure with DNA. But they want to bring people in who have competency in building smartphone games to work with their teams that are good at building traditional game platform games. I think this is a huge announcement. I can't wait to see what comes next. And I can't wait to see what the games look like. I hope. I
think that it's not going to stop it's not Nintendo from making the best games they can for
their own platforms.
For their own platforms.
Of course.
That's where and even if they make more money on the smartphone games in terms of dollar value, I could never see them abandoning their own consoles and platform.
No,
well,
like Sega did.
Yeah.
I mean, look at how that worked out for Sega.
Sega
right?
didn't have the same characters, though. But I can't see Nintendo becoming a character company, becoming a Disney.
I mean, the other thing that Nintendo has going for it is the people that are forward-facing, the faces of the games the faces of the game makers are aging rapidly. I mean, Miyamoto is not getting younger. Iwata is not getting younger. Like they have to have a generational shift at some point in the not too distant future, or else people are going to lose faith that, if when Miyamoto retires, who makes the next Mario game, right?
I think they're
scary.
Yeah. Who's in charge of Zelda when Miyamoto? I guess somebody else has been in charge of Zelda for a while now. But anyway.
They don't allow him to ride his bike to work. Have I said that on this podcast?
Because it's too dangerous for him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a cherished treasure.
Yeah. So I mean, I hope that we'll start to see more kind of forward-looking stuff from Nintendo. Their goal has always been to be a 125-year company, right? It's something they've said for a long time.
What do you mean?
They had a 100-year plan,
right?
Or when they started the company,
they take a long view. Yeah. So
I believe they've been around since the 1800s.
Yeah. They used to make playing cards.
Yeah.
Yeah. And pachinko. Apple's doing an open beta for iOS. This is new. They did an open beta for OS X last summer, right?
I think that that leads credence to the idea that this year's WWDC, the big iOS emphasis will be on stability and refining the experience since it's been 2 years now since we've had new Chrome, a big redesign. And so less on features, more on refining the experience.
I hope that they do that for both OS 10 and iOS, frankly. I mean, the OS 10, the last OS 10 release is real up and down. I really like some of it, but some of it's still really slow.
Oh, in terms of bugs or features?
Just in general.
Yeah.
The continuity stuff finally works now after the last OS 10 and iOS updates. But it's one of those things that, the old joke about Apple stuff, that's great if it works, and as soon as it doesn't, you're completely boned.
Yeah, right.
When continuity stuff wasn't working for me, there was basically no way for me to fix it other than to create a new user profile and sign the old one out of iCloud, everything out of iCloud, and then sign everything back into the new iCloud profile.
That also makes me think that we're not going to see Force Touch on iOS this year, and that'll be a next year feature.
You think?
That'll be the big iPhone 7 selling point.
That makes sense to hold. Although I can see that both ways. Force Touch, we'll talk about Force Touch in a minute, but
Force Touch would be a huge shift for developers and users. And while it would be, I could see them eventually making that whether it's this year or next year, the flagship, the S feature.
I think we're much more likely to see the new haptics in the iPhone 6 Plus or 6G, whatever they're going to call it.
They can get the magnets in, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't think that goes part and parcel with the Force Touch?
I think you can do one without the other. After seeing how this trackpad works, I think.
I think we're going to see Force Touch more before the haptics, because the Force Touch.
But if you think about it, the haptics are a small upgrade. Think, oh hey, this is something you're going to notice in your pocket more, right?
Well, in terms of like feel the immediate effect,
Yeah.
You get way more benefit from haptics, but putting that in a phone, I think is more challenging than a screenless touchpad.
I think the big thing that we're going to see this year on iOS is Apple Watch integration. I think that this is the typical situation where they roll out something new. They have 6 months after they roll it out to figure out exactly how people are using it and what people want in terms of integration, and then they'll add that in time for the iOS.
But what an S
9
feature.
release.
Yeah, what would that S feature be though?
Yeah.
Because that sounds more like software feature.
I think that's why I think the haptics thing is an easy S feature if they can fit it.
I mean, I'm saying what an S feature that would be. Yeah. That would make me feel real shitty about buying an iPhone 6 last year.
Did you buy an iPhone 6 last year?
But it would make me feel shitty.
Well, I buy a new phone every year. It's no big deal.
Not for most people.
Yeah, no, but I mean, most people, we'll see.
Like, talk about splitting the user base.
The Force Touch?
Force Touch as a right click. Or, I mean, from a developer perspective, you can do so much with a Force Touch. You could do. I'm not saying you have to. But you
got to support all the old users too.
The Force Touch is the least interesting thing about the old trackpad is the thing.
The new trackpad?
Yeah, the hard press is the least interesting thing about the trackpad on the new laptop. Like the haptics are much more interesting to me.
Is it analog so that you can press harder and harder and harder?
It is pressure sensitive. What is exposed right now is that you just click and then press hard.
Yeah.
And then something happens, right. But presumably it's pressure sensitive as well.
So it could be, they have it's smart to do a cutoff where it's only two presses, but presumably it can be as sensitive as the sensor is.
I mean, Apple, if you look at how Apple rolls out new interface stuff, they just started defaulting the 3-finger swipes and all that stuff on a few generations ago with OS 10. So, like, I'm not holding my breath for magic on that front really quickly. I think what they'll do is roll out the feature, do something that's cool but is Apple only and isn't accessible to developers for a generation, and then once that generation's done, then they'll roll out the wide stuff to avoid that, hey, everybody's fucked, and then it's people who have 2 years worth of phones are supported rather than people who have 1 year worth of phones.
As an Apple user, I'm super psyched that they're doing these betas, not because I want to test the OSs, but because I want them to be bug-free when they're released, and that has been a problem.
I want people to hammer on them.
Exactly. And the OSs, both on phone and desktop, are so complicated compared to when they were released. And software is a house of cards. I can understand why there's so many issues, but there are going to be more issues now. Mm-hmm. So, good for Apple doing the betas.
There's pricing news about the HTC Vive. Let's just do a VR roundup here. Pricing news about the HTC Vive, the Steam VR goggles.
How many dollars?
There's Vive.
Vive?
It's Vive.
Vive.
It's
Let's make sure it was called Vive.
Vive? Like Viva Pinata?
Like Revive.
Well, that's the weird thing. The actual logo has a little RE in front of it.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that? It has
So
it
Revive.
has a stylized RE in front of the Vive, but no one calls it that.
It's Vive.
Vive.
All right.
Make sure
I'm going to continue to mess that up. I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now.
So how much is
We're just going to call it Steam VR.
how much was my
That's good.
Oculus Rift DK2?
$300.
$300. It's just the headset.
And the camera.
Can you still buy that?
That's right.
Probably.
Yeah, you can. The DK2? Yeah.
Yeah.
300. That's all? It was just $300?
Might have been 400. I don't know.
No. I thought it was
Might
either
have been.
300 or 3. Let's not get this wrong. I'm clicking right
Norm's
now.
fact checking.
$350 for DK2.
What a ripoff.
And
Fuck those guys.
wow. And what Oculus has said is that they want, one of the advantages of being bought by Facebook is that they want to get hardware out there to the most affordable way possible.
Yeah.
They don't need to make margins on hardware to be successful as a company.
Yeah.
They want to get the platform out there. Now doesn't mean that whatever their consumer version is going to be and whenever that's released, it's going to be $350, but they have implied that it'll be around that price, $350 to $400. I would hope that it stays closer to $300, $350 for a consumer release. Now, that's also presuming no controller. And in our minds, it was also we for the longest time had assumed that no controller and had been okay with that.
Using a gamepad, sticking a throttle.
Exactly. You get a camera, you get the goggles if they're still using IR tracking the same way. With HTC Vive, HTC has come out and said expect a higher price point for because you're not only getting the headset, which we're talking about. You did the research, Jeremy. We're talking 8 cents a sensor.
No, I didn't say 8 cents. No.
Someone else did 8 cents online.
Oh, God, that would be super cheap compared to what I saw.
What did you say?
I saw if you bought thousands of them, they still cost about $1.
$1 per
yeah.
the
so,
sensors.
I mean, assuming they're maybe cut that in half, it's still quarters per chip.
HTC has the ability to buy in large volume, though.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. But it's still not going to be 8 cents, I don't think.
So we're talking about a not cheap headset or not using cheap technology plus 2 controllers, wireless controllers with not cheap technology, linear actuators and motors and stuff, and also 2 base stations.
Well, hold on. We can assume that the price on the controllers minus the optical stuff is going to be, given that it's 2 pads and a couple of buttons, it'll be in the same price range for them to manufacture as the Steam controller,
which is
right?
$50.
$50.
So $50
So
for,
figure $50 price for that.
for 2 controllers.
For 2 controllers
you think?
plus the optical sensors
I'm
at between
let's-
8 cents
The
and $1
controllers
each.
have to have their own transmitters in them
Yeah.
and all the logic.
So
that goes
so it's
inside.
double
Let's say-
the cost on the transmitters.
So say $100, which I think that's a
I
reasonable
think that's
price.
aggressive, but okay.
You think that's high?
I think that's high.
For $100 for 2 wireless
between
controllers?
50 and 100,
Let's say
somewhere in
between
there.
50 and 100. Because like people are, all these
We are
Kickstarters.
way
like
off the
STEM.
deep end here, guys.
So
It's dangerous territory.
between 50 and 100 consumer pricing for controllers, 2 wireless controllers, base stations. I'm saying
You mean the lighthouses?
lighthouses, sensor dumb, there's no signal. $50 for 2 lighthouses.
That seems
sounds
right for me.
reasonable.
A laser,
know. Again,
motor, some
this
spinning
is-
mirrors.
Laser spinning mirrors.
Pie in the sky here.
Again, speculation. 150 conservatively
I hope
for
Chet doesn't listen to this
controllers and lighthouses, plus a headset, which could be $300.
Let's say that.
We're talking about $500.
Isn't it 2
all in.
screens?
It is.
Yeah.
I think 2 screens matters. Yeah, you need then.
It's cost. There's more drivers, more screen drivers, all that stuff.
The chipset does 2 up. The chips can handle 2 screens.
Really?
The Crescent Base stuff. They sell the chips now. They can do 2 outputs.
Like the phone
stuff. The stuff they're
controllers.
buying.
Okay.
Do we know if there's going to be some sort of console that everything plugs into on the PC side? Like a little head unit?
A breakout box, you mean?
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know if it'll probably come with a strap. The
Is it
cable
gonna come
management strap.
with the butt strap?
The USB hub strap?
So we're
Basically, it sounds like it's going to cost $1 million from where we're at right now, if my math
The
is
thing
right.
is, it sounds more like $500.
it sounds more. Yeah.
Which, now that I think about it, that sounds great because I was ready to drop $1,000 at GDC.
Yeah, you. I'm sure you walked out of that room with your credit card out.
Yeah, I was just holding money out.
That's what I was
Nobody
there.
took it.
I was like, hey, Chet, I'll take one right now. Here, I'll swipe.
I
I
know
can go get
so many
cash.
people, on the Oculus forum or on the Reddit /Oculus forums, choppy the bit, ready to pay to get a Vive dev kit.
Don't
Don't buy a
dead
don't
kit.
if you're a consumer. don't buy a Vive. Just like we didn't recommend people
You
buy
can't
DK1
control
or
these
DK2.
people.
I know.
They're not gonna
And
make this widely
myself
available.
either.
Here's the
I
thing.
want one. Hell yeah, I want one.
The Vive dev kit, they're not going to just put on a store. You're going to have to. You're going to have to be a Steam developer, and you'll have to go through a whole rigmarole. You're not going to be able to just go buy one.
They did say on the webpage it says select developers.
Yes.
But at the recent South by Southwest interview, Chet said they'll have a webpage where you can buy one because somebody asked that question.
A webpage where you can sign up.
Is that what he said?
He said sign up.
Oh, okay.
There'll be a webpage where you can sign up for more information. It'll be so
It's very carefully
it's
worded.
Not, it's not going to be like it's not going to be curated in terms of like Valve. You can only get one if Valve reaches out to you.
Yeah.
You will be able to request the ability to buy one. I have no idea about in terms of units. Obviously, they want more out there, and a lot of people have.
They want a lot of
Oculus.
people building games.
Yeah, and there are tens of thousands of people with tens of thousands of Oculus dev kits.
It seems like they're focusing really strongly at first on indie teams that can iterate quickly and release something. I mean, so the Idle Thumbs guys on either this week or
they've done
last
that
week's
already.
podcast.
By necessity.
Yeah, by necessity.
They've done that, and then the first pass. This is the second
you need to
pass.
put your headphones on because you're not talking in the microphone again.
They've done that with the first pass, reaching out. To the
No,
indie
I know,
devs.
but I think that they're going to continue focusing on indies because you're not going to get a AAA game done in time for launch this Christmas.
But you want to get it in their hands,
of
as
course,
soon as possible.
That'll work itself out. EA is going to, or Ubisoft will buy as many of these as they think they need.
I think one, they have their own AAA development team at Valve who undoubtedly is working on something for this.
Dota 3.
Something for this, something for Vive. I don't think Valve would launch Steam VR
Left 4 Dead
and a
3,
platform
Portal
without
3.
wanting to make their own game for it and also learn the lessons of VR in that process.
Or teach the lessons.
Or teach and be able to spread that, the next Valve Dev Days. We know they've already reached out to indies because they have fast turnarounds. But I don't think that is mutually exclusive with them already seeding AAA developers with kits for next year's E3.
So here's the thing: they would have had to, if they wanted games out in time for the consumer launch of this fall, that are AAA huge games, unless they're just small subsets like the stuff that Capcom did with Dead Rising 2 and or the Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon, the kind of small side games using existing assets or existing engine. Like that stuff takes a long time to build, and it's not like an 18-month turn anymore. It's 2 or 3 years. So they would have had to be seeding stuff ages ago if you have to build this stuff from the beginning for VR.
I think we're underestimating the ability of a studio to make a compelling game. It doesn't need to be a $300 million game, but a compelling game in 1 year. And I think it's not mutually exclusive at all. Like while they announced a partnership with indies and had the wall of indie logos at GDC and South by Southwest and brought people on stage,
I don't think we're going to see an Assassin's Creed game using this fall.
Not this fall.
Like, there's no market. The other thing about the AAAs is they're super risk averse. So here, Valve can afford to pay a 3-man team and just say, look, we're going to guarantee you this much money, whether it sells or not, because we need to have software on our platform. They can't. They can do 200 of those for what it would cost to do one AAA title.
Yeah,
and they're much better off having 200 games at launch than one huge game.
And
I don't think they're not mutually exclusive.
Then speaking of risk aversion,
yeah, it is because EA's not. Sorry, Jeremy.
Yeah.
EA is not going to invest $30 million in a game for a platform that doesn't exist.
I'm saying from Valve's perspective, it's not mutually exclusive for them to seed these out.
The AAA game we're going to see is going to come from Valve. That goes without saying. I bet that's the only AAA thing we see at launch.
I don't think we'll see a AAA game at launch. I think we'll see
Half-Life 3, Jeremy.
Whatever.
Confirmed.
I don't think we'll actually see Half-Life 3 in VR. We'll probably see something in the Portal universe, maybe something in the Half-Life universe, but it won't be a full-fledged AAA game.
I think that's right.
I think that just because we
Proof
haven't
of
heard
concept.
anything from quote-unquote AAA developers
what is
and
a
big
VR
publishers,
AAA game?
Yeah.
Because you can't do a first-person shooter.
I think and I think when we're talking about production quality, a quote-unquote AAA game is many more artists than you would typically think working on any game, more assets.
1,200 people work on Assassin's Creed every year.
And I'm not saying it's that.
Right.
I don't think it's not black or white. But I don't think that it's just going to be the 3-man, 5-man teams making games.
I agree with Will. I think it's too early to take the risk on a AAA budget for VR because there's so many things to experiment with in the low end first.
The AAA guys release one franchise a generation.
I don't think it needs to be a $100 million game.
Well, but if you look at EA, their statement is, look, we make AAA games and we make free-to-play shit because those are the only two places you can make money on an EA scale. Right?
It doesn't need to be AAA to entice people either.
No,
it'd be a
doesn't.
waste of money, frankly.
Yeah.
I can't wait to play Job Simulator. I swear to God, I would pay $1,000 to play Job Simulator.
Right now?
Yeah.
I bet you can call Alex up right now.
I just want to blow up
from
balloons.
Alchemy Labs and say
You can fly to Austin.
here's $1,000. Can I play Job Simulator
Dude,
for
if they put that up on Kickstarter, that would fill up instantly.
as a come play Job Simulator?
Yeah.
Anyway, I think. What are your guesses on price point? I think everybody agrees sub $1,000 for the whole thing.
Well, here's the thing. If it's $500, which is what we're talking about,
Yeah.
that means Valve has adopted the same philosophy as Oculus, which is give the hardware away for cost and
Right.
make your money on the back end on the.
So what-
on the
That implies
software.
then they're paying money to HTC for each unit sold, because I don't think HTC is in the business of selling stuff for
right.
nothing.
Especially since
Yeah.
they're not going to be the
Or
exclusive.
if they're going to get some
Steam
sort of
VR.
kickback from Steam sales,
Right.
which
So
they won't. Right?
think about business model. Where does Valve? Valve wants to make money. They make money from Steam.
Yeah.
A ton of money from Steam.
Their Steam
Dump truck loads.
That's their whole model now. I think everything is about Steam sales.
Yeah.
So they want to build a platform that can distribute games and they can take a cut off of. They want people to buy in their platform as opposed to a way more closed off platform. Because if you talk about closed platforms, both Steam and Oculus are technically closed platforms in terms of the commerce.
Yep.
But Steam, at least, you can distribute on Steam and other places. I don't know how Oculus will work. So
Currently,
What's-
the Oculus has a store,
has a store,
Yeah.
right?
but it's not exclusive.
What's in it for Valve?
They want to have a platform to sell PC games that destroys Windows, Sony, and Xbox. Right. I mean, that's the goal.
Yeah.
They want to be the leader in video games.
The day they're releasing the Vive, ideally, they will release a box for $50 that allows you to play all your PC games in the same place you play your Xbox.
I think
so
that's
it's-
happening
it's
earlier, even.
It's November for
Yeah.
the
Fine.
Steam OS stuff.
It's all November.
Oh, it's all November. Okay.
November for Steam OS.
I can't imagine that the Stream stuff will work with the VR stuff, though.
So maybe that is right. That's the play. VR being a OS, a traditional OS agnostic platform is their play.
And if you're looking for something to speed adoption of Linux so that Steam OS takes off, the fact that they're building these games, if they're making Source the way you make these games, like that mission accomplished.
That's kind of a limited thing. I mean, you might need Source for this year.
Yeah.
I think they got to open that up to.
Oh,
other
no, of
engines,
course, of
right?
course.
The Vive support.
I'm sure they're anybody who wants to make a game for Vive is going to be able to make a game for Vive. Right? They're not going to limit. They're not going to say, "Oh, nope, sorry, Unity, sorry, UE4,
Right.
no Vive for you."
So Chet did do a talk. It wasn't at South by Southwest, but it was at this maybe I think European conference. It was like a half-hour long talk, and he brought several game developers, the indie game developers, on stage, who have been making. I think I forget the name of one, but they make like a third person like God style.
Like populist type game.
More, I think more Lucky's Tale type thing. I'm not exactly sure, but from that talk, there were some insights about the Steam VR development process, talking about how they got to where they are and some of the lessons learned.
It was at EGX Resd.
EGX Res conference, and there are some interesting things. I think the developers.
Bosses Studios and Vertigo Games.
Yes, and the game they were making is I think it's a disembodied, not traditional first person game, and having that type of game in a walking around space, like they talked about needing to add like clouds so the player can walk on, and people who are in that space not wanting to walk beyond where they could see in the virtual space there being a platform.
Yeah.
So even with the games like Lucky's Tale, where if you're sitting down, and you could play a platformer and you're looking in, that felt comfortable doing that, like using positional tracking. But if you are standing up and doing the same type of thing, even walking around a virtual risk map or something, or a train set, you need to have a representation of the floor for the actual person to walk around, or else they will refuse to walk in those spaces. So you can lead the person using that. Interesting things like that. He talked about when in testing some of the demos, you really the art and the assets and the gameplay, because you're developing it on a computer screen, presumably, and not in VR. That experience, you cannot translate that experience until you test it in VR. Like he talked about the whale demo, where you can run it so many times on the screen and program it on a monitor, but the what that game becomes when you put on the VR goggles and walk around changes the way you think about making that game.
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, when you hopped into the Vive Portal demo, you'd never seen those robots to scale.
To scale with you.
Yeah.
To you.
Even though on a monitor, regardless of like, if even you're using a 30-inch monitor and a 4K monitor, it's in front of your face, and you walk up to a wall, that's first person, but it's not actual first person.
Yep.
And then also he talked about like in one of the demos he was using like a fishing rod game, a simulator, and how easily your brain adapts to thinking that is an actual object. And I think when we're talking about VR controllers, and Oculus has said, they've thought about VR controllers a lot. This wand, this grippable, dowel metaphor that Valve has is really strong, because so many ways in which we interact with objects in the real world, we grip it like a wand, like a stick.
Yes.
Whether it's a spatula, scissors, a gun, an actual magic wand, a fishing rod, a whip, an umbrella, all these things. And so there are a lot of options from
giving away all your
perspective.
ideas.
No.
You know what? One of the other developers talked about when they were early in development and they were doing a first-person game, they had full-fledged arms connected to the handles, and they would do inverse kinematics to control where they assumed your elbows were at all times, but they would never match up to where your actual elbows were in space. And when you look down and saw the virtual elbow out of place, it would break the illusion.
So that's like that Sony demo that we played, the Sony Morpheus one, where the London Heist demo, where at the second half of the demo we're holding guns, but there was actual physical modeling of your arms.
Yeah.
And we said that was the worst part of it. The guns look great because you actually, the move controllers were one-to-one with the guns, but even their abstracted modeling of your arms, one didn't move exactly like your arms move, and two weren't positioned because everyone has different width shoulders, and that's not being tracked and modeled.
Well, and also the scale was off. The scale being off was really bad. Yeah.
So it's just interesting that they would add that in order to immerse you further, but it actually has the inverse effect.
Right.
So Valve's solution to that was just do the hands.
Just do the hands.
Fuck it, man.
And when you talked about using the balloon color demo, and your fingers being abstracted, because of where your thumb position is, I think that could still work, because that is one-to-one where your thumb actually touches the circular Valve trackpad. So developers have to find a way to balance between how much abstracted skeletal modeling can you do based on that information that's available, and what your brain is more susceptible to believing versus more resistant to believing.
We're just gonna have to test these out when they come out. Right?
Yeah, man.
$1,000. I'll buy one now.
Take my money.
A couple other things. YouTube supports 360-degree video now.
Oh yeah.
You can do that with the Kodak camera.
I haven't tried it.
Well, you mean you can make it with the
You can make it with the Kodak camera.
You can use Chrome to look at any of this. You just go to YouTube, find a 3D video or a 360 video, and use your mouse to pan around inside the video.
So you can watch what's happening behind the camera on all sides of the camera, the whole thing. It's pretty cool.
I think it's great. This came out a week ago. I'd be surprised if there isn't somebody already having it working on the Oculus Rift.
And you went to the GPU Tech conference yesterday.
I did, yeah. I wanted to go to the keynote. I guess they had an interesting talk with Elon Musk.
We monopolized your time instead, doing something that we're not going to talk about quite yet.
Secret project.
But
I went yesterday because there's a demo scene component.
Explain demo scene.
GTC. Demo scene, which I'm sure 2% of your listeners already know very, very well.
Super into, yeah.
Is it's kind of a It's an underground computer community. They've been around since the 80s. They started out of the hacker scene where they would make these graphical intros to games that were hacked and cracked, essentially.
So they were dirty pirates.
They were dirty, dirty pirates, but then they got morals and ethics, and they splintered off of the piracy scene and started making these graphic demos just for competition with one another to show off who was the better programmer, and they'd go to these parties and they would compete with one another.
So it's like rap battles?
Very much. It's actually, there's a lot of hip-hop crossover. They do greets in the same ways that 80s and 90s hip-hop would greet one another.
Okay.
Shout-outs?
Yeah, shout-outs, essentially. And it's always been an interest of mine. In the 90s particularly, I found it highly inspiring because a lot of the graphics would be even better than you see in games because they'd have to worry about collision detection and AI and all that stuff.
Right.
And there were small teams, as were game developers. But
And it's interesting because a lot of it originally was about packing the most information into the smallest file, right?
And that was sort of a necessity back in the day, but it's become an art form in more recent years. The past 15 years, they've had a whole community, a part of the demo scene that just does that. They pack entire games into 64K, just amazing amounts of data into 4K. They do procedurally generated graphics. So it's just one still frame of a graphic that gets generated out of like 1 or 2K of data. And it looks like a beautiful pool table or something like that. Anyway, it's like the Olympics for programmers, and they get together and they just compete with one another for a little bit of money.
This is a thing you've been into since I've known you.
Yeah, I was one of the only people running a website for it in the 90s called the PC Demo Fan Club. I'm friends with the guys who used to run the Hoarded Archive. So I've always been a part of the community. I made 2 little mini documentaries for a DVD series called Mind Candy about the demo scene. And I just love it. More recent years, I don't follow it as much, but I still, when they're in North America, which is a rare thing, because this is a European community.
It seems like something that happens in Sweden or Finland or something, so it's cold most of the year.
Right. You just kind of got to go, especially when it's just an hour away. So I went to GTC because NVIDIA has this, they have embraced the demo scene and gives them a room every year. But I also went up to the show floor. NVIDIA's doing some interesting things that I didn't know about. They're trying to get into the automobile industry. You guys know about this?
Yeah, they've been working on it. Well, Jensen, the CEO of NVIDIA, is a huge car nut.
And guess what he had right there on the exhibit hall?
A Ferrari or a Lambo or a Tesla.
The Tesla and the Lambo were out front in the lobby, but his i8 was sitting there in the exhibit hall.
The all-electric BMW sports car.
It's the one from Mission Impossible 4.
Was it in that?
It's the one that they drive at the end in Dubai.
Into the sandstorm?
No. At the end
It's
when
the one that he
chasing.
races through and does the That movie's
It's the
great.
$125,000 electric BMW. It's beautiful car. Apparently he didn't like it.
Oh.
So he gave it to his engineers, and they retrofitted it with an NVIDIA technology and console.
Okay.
So they've added what they're making on this NVIDIA Drive platform, which car vendors can buy and implement, and it's a series of cameras that does deep learning. It can tell where a cop car is and what a van is, and it looks around the car, and it can just optically recognize everything.
So it's basically like KIT.
In the street. It's basically KIT. I mean, it's just
Michael.
one small step towards self-driving automobiles, which is going to be fun.
Well, it's this one, right? You hold your arm up to cross body, and you say, "Kit, I need you at the front entrance."
Precisely. Yeah. So they had.
I'll be right there, Michael.
They had simulated cars parking themselves and other such things. So I think it's cool to see NVIDIA branching out into.
That's exciting. Yeah.
Yep.
I think if that's it, we are enjoying the dulcet tones of Norm typing in the background.
Important things happening right now.
I'm going to play some music and mute Norm so we don't hear him typing anymore, and we'll talk about what we've been testing. Jeremy Williams.
Word.
This weekend, I did an extended test drive with a BMW i3. You and I have talked about this car a lot.
I was so jealous because I have had my eye on this car since I first saw one on the street and said, "What is that?"
It looks like a future car.
Yeah.
The pictures make it look much better than it actually looks in person.
Well, the one that I had was a profoundly ugly color.
I'm just saying also, I mean, that's how marketing works.
Yes.
Promo photos. But if you search BMW i3, at least I got a sense that it was at least comparable to their X3, the SUV.
In terms of size.
In terms of size,
Yeah.
in terms of form factor, the photos make it look fantastic. And I haven't seen the Tesla X in person, but that's an SUV.
Yeah.
So I assume that it was going to be like that.
Well, this isn't an SUV, though.
It's not. It's not. Which is, again, the photos made me think it was an SUV, but seeing it in person, This looks way more like a bigger smart car.
It's
like a huge smart car.
yeah, it's huge for
But
a
it's
smart
still
car.
the kind of same form factor, a very small, short hood.
Yeah. Or that Fiat or any of those subcompact cars.
Yeah, and look at the wheels. Like the photos are, wow, great. It's not like the Prius at all.
Cool rims, bro.
Really big rims and nice like sporty tires. And it's in person, and the tires are like half as wide as I think tires should look.
Norm, it's a all electric economy. It's a car for economical driving, not for sports car driving. It is
Made
not
by
a
a sport, but
fancy Lexus.
Right, made by a fancy BMW.
It's kind of it's a
No, that's what it is.
It is made by BMW. It's a fancy electric car.
And
Yes.
I don't think I can be faulted for thinking, if BMW made, I've seen the i8.
Well,
Right?
but if
it's still in the I line, and the i8 purely definitely a sports car.
I think all I means is it's electric though. Right?
branding is, I don't know how their branding works, but the presumption when I saw was like, wow, this is going to be, they've done something, because you look at a Tesla, which is an all electric car, and they have full size tires. This ended up being less like a Tesla and more like a really souped up
Fiat.
Yes,
Fiat 500e.
Yes.
All right. Well,
Yes.
look.
Or
So
Leaf.
a Model S, if you're going to get the good one, you're going to spend close to $100,000.
120
Yeah.
is if you want 300 miles
Yes.
range.
All right.
is the current.
My i3 maxes out at like 55,000.
I think it's 48.
Starts at 41 and then
Goes up,
It
yeah.
does one based on what options.
Yeah.
So it's really strange.
So it's
I mean,
less expensive. I mean,
Yeah.
it's for people who would love to have a Model S, but maybe would like to spend less money.
So here's the thing. There's two types of all electric cars right now. There's cars that mimic normal cars, which is basically the Tesla and the i8 and a couple of the Fisker and a couple of others that have 200 to 300 mile range,
Yeah.
equivalent to what you would get on a tank of gas in a luxury sedan. Then there's the commuter cars, which are the Nissan Leaf, the Fiat 500e, the BMW i3,
Would you
the
include
Chevy
the-
Spark.
What about the Volt? I mean, the Volt's all electric for 30 miles.
Volt's-
For 30 miles, it is.
But the Volt's a gas engine, and it can run for 300 miles
yes, but it's all electric until
for the first 30.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it plugs in.
And the new one's 50-mile range.
Right. The Volt, there's an all-electric Chevy that actually tested really highly, and I just don't fit into. I think it's called the Spark. There's a bunch of others.
Yeah.
Basically, the car manufacturers were strongly incentivized and or required to make these cars by the federal government.
the Spark looks more like but I mean, the BMW looks like that has that same short hood.
It's in
Spark thing.
all of these cars have a specific shape because of aerodynamics, right? They have thin tires and a light shape because the less contact you have with tires on the road, the more efficiency you get out of your you get the
so
less
weird.
friction on the wheels.
It doesn't look aerodynamic, but
Look-
is it?
I assume that they put these in wind tunnels because every bit matters.
Okay, so my understanding is once you get inside, the interior, the quality of the components, and the feel of the car, the BMW is going to be the best experience short of a Tesla.
That's my experience so far.
Okay.
Like the best dash, the best.
With the best seats,
Best-
like it has the Chevy Volt. I can't sit in without hitting my head on the ceiling.
Oh.
Right, like
So
I'm
ergonomically,
6'2".
it's the bad.
It's not a good fit for me. Priuses are good. They have lots of headroom, which is nice because of that bulbous roof that they have. But a lot of the pure electrics, especially the smart car, was. I mean, you've seen that video. It was.
Yes, but that was-
it was snuggly.
Yes, clown
and
car.
kind of terrifying. So this rides like a real car, as opposed to the Smart, which rode like a go-kart. And I still haven't driven a Leaf. I've got to go do that this weekend. Basically, I'm in the market for an all-electric car because given my commute driving profile, my wife has a car that she drives all over the country. I drive about 42, 44 miles a day each way. And I spend, as a result of the time in which I drive and the amount of city driving I do, like $250 a month on gas.
And
right?
you found out BMW has this extended
test drive.
test drive policy, which is awesome. I didn't know about that.
So it makes a ton of sense for this car, especially because there's a significant shift in driving. And so if you're used to driving a gas car, switching it all electric, I've been worried about. Like it's a big commitment to switch to that on something that's going to cost tens of thousands of dollars, or I'm going to be committed to for a multi-year lease. And like I didn't know if I could live. Like I assumed going in that in order to build an infrastructure at my house for an electric car, I have to put a 240 volt charger in my garage to have level 2 charging, I think is what that's called, which would let me charge the car in 4 to 6 hours or something like that. And, and then I assumed that I probably wouldn't need a gas motor. So some of the electric cars, the i3 is one of them, have a supplemental, basically motorcycle engine.
Range extender, they call it
a range extender, but it's basically a motorcycle engine hooked up to a generator that holds 2 gallons of gas and will give you an extra 50 or 60 miles of range if you get in a situation where you need that. And I don't often drive in a way that would need to give me 100 miles on a charge, but we do go to Petaluma and Napa and the East Bay occasionally for work, and it would be nice to be able to do that. So the extended test drive is a 2 or 3 night loan. I picked it up on Friday, returned it on Monday afternoon, and I understand getting in that car. I immediately understood why they did that. Because like the Tesla, it does aggressive regenerative charging when you let off the gas. So when you push down on the gas, it goes just like a normal car. But as soon as you take your foot off the gas, it charges as if it wants to stop as soon as it can. So that adds friction to the drivetrain, and that makes the car slow down, which means that when you first take off out of the parking lot at the dealership, it's pretty herky-jerky. In kind of the same way it is if you're driving like a manual transmission car and you're bad at shifting.
Is Tesla in that car the only car that does that?
It's the only 2 that I know of.
And Tesla has an option to adjust that feature.
Yes.
So meaning that Tesla will add more power and fake the roll?
No, I think you sacrifice adding
You
power.
sacrifice charging.
Yeah, you sacrifice charging.
Can you do that on the BMW? 'Cause I would prefer that.
So you can switch it from, there's 3 modes for driving in the BMW. The comfort mode, it seems like it's a little bit less aggressive.
At the regenerative driving.
At the regenerative braking.
Well, we should test that.
So we did. It's really hard to tell.
Yeah, then that's...
The thing that actually happened after a couple of hours of driving the car is you get used to using the regenerative braking as the brakes.
Yeah.
So you just let your foot off the brake to stop at stop signs, off the gas to stop at stop signs and stuff like that. And it became a 1-foot driving experience.
That's why cruise control is so important.
Cruise control is super important in the car. The reason I think they do the extended test drive is it takes a little bit of adjustment to get used to driving it. And if you just did like a 2-mile lap around the dealership with somebody in the car with you, you'd be like, nope, fuck this. I'm not buying this thing. But once you get used to it, it's quite fun.
Plus, they want you to get a feel for the recharge process and get a sense of where you might do that.
Right. And so the takeaway for me was, for my 40 miles a day round trip, 45 miles a day round trip, I actually don't think I need to put a 240 volt charger in my house.
120 is fine.
120 is more than sufficient.
And that would be a kind of like a not charge every day. Or I mean, you charge every day, but not charging.
It's probably not full in the morning
every day, but that's fine because you have more weekend charging time.
Well, so there's 2 things that happen. One is that on the newer cars, especially, and the Leaf does this as well, even if you use the 120, in the old days when you had to put the charging station in to control the time that the charging is active, right? So if you wanted to charge at the nighttime between 11 and 5 a.m. when the power is the absolute cheapest for PG&E on the EV plans, you had to do that using a charge station. And now the newer electric cars don't, all that stuff's on board. So when you park the BMW, it says, okay, when are you taking off tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock? When does your cheap charging start? So you program that in and it just knows it's 11 o'clock where we live. And it'll not charge until 11 o'clock and then do as much as it can beforehand. But if you say I need a departure time by this and you want it to be full, then it'll start earlier in the more expensive charging time.
Mm-hmm. Can you charge in your garage here at work, by the way?
I do not have, there's no charging stations in the garage at work.
Even a 120 jack.
There might be 120 jacks. I haven't looked.
You would love that.
It would be nice. It would be free.
Yeah.
Free goes a long way.
Well, someone's paying for it, but
so
maybe not that much.
There's Zynga charging stations. Like there's charging stations at Zynga that show up on. So, okay, next thing. The nav is really important in the electric car. This is the other thing I learned. Normally, I wouldn't pay for the expensive center console nav option and all that stuff.
Really?
I have a phone. My phone knows where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
The car doesn't. Well, this car did, but normally the car doesn't. If you have the right app on your phone, this can tap into your iOS calendar and can pull the location and stuff so that the nav will know, okay, your appointment's here. Here's how long you needed to go, blah, 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 blah. Oh. With the all electrics, the nav is really important. And Tesla actually just rolled out a feature update to this as well for the Model S that basically says, we're going to start warning the shit out of you if you look like you're driving someplace that's going to take you outside of your capacity to get back to a charger. So you can theoretically never unknowingly run out of range of charging. The BMW's nav system both pops up with charging stations. Like you can go into the nav and search for charging stations, and it has all the relevant data about them that it pulls from the internet. So it's like, this is a level 2. This is a level 2 with fast DC. This is blah, blah, blah.
Presumably accurate and updated regularly.
If it's not, then it's fairly useless. But since it connects to the internet to do that stuff, I assume that
so
it's
the car
updated
has its own, or it's your phone internet?
It uses your phone's internet, and it connects. It uses Google Maps. Rather than CarPlay.
The data from Google Maps, even though the interface doesn't look exactly like Google Maps.
The maps are provided by Google, and the data is provided by Google as well, as my understanding. So I think that you want to have an easy access to a database of public charging. I'm sure you can get that with an app on your phone, but just being able to use the in-dash thing to point to the right place was really useful. The car feels much more like a sports car than most of these. It drives much more like a sports car than most of these electrics.
Did you floor it?
Yeah, it'll really push you back in the seat.
That's cool.
Instant torque.
Yeah,
Constant torque.
all the way through.
Yeah.
I mean, until we hit 85 miles an hour going down the freeway. And when we hit 70 in the smart car, I thought we were going to die and immediately backed off. With this, it rode like a much more capable car.
Did you ever run down the battery and have to use the
I couldn't do it. I ran out of time.
Because I've watched every video review I can find. Not one of them shows the sound of that engine.
It's the thing that I talked to the dealer about it, and they said if I wanted to see that, then they would set that up.
Okay.
Not recommended though. It's not like it's one of those things where you want to every daily run into the gas.
It's not like the Volt. So
Right.
where you can just drive across country in this car.
Right.
The gas, and you said it's like a motorcycle engine.
Yeah.
It's emergency only. Think of it as a reserve tank.
Yeah.
Or it's for those times, like if you drive to Petaluma and in order to get back, you need to hit the gas tank because somebody was on the public charger. It's the get out of jail,
And
get out of towing free.
My understanding is they did that. They could have put a bigger engine in it and made it more like the Volt, which is basically unlimited range as soon as you use the battery up. But they didn't do that for tax reasons, because if they put a motor in that only extends the range as much as the battery capacity, they're supposed to be about 80 miles on paper.
In reality, it was probably 65 to 70, depending on how aggressively you drive.
Then there's a better tax incentive for you, the buyer, when you buy the car.
Right. So that's exactly it. There's you get a federal discount and a state discount depending on the state you're in, or a tax rebate. If you buy pure electric, it's less if you buy electric partial electric hybrid like Priuses and Volts, and it's even less the further down that chain you go. So this still counts as a zero emission vehicle. In California, that means you get a green.
That's it then.
A green tag instead of a white tag. For the carpooling, you still get to use the HOV lane with one person in the car.
Does the Volt count as a zero emission?
No, the Volt gets a green tag.
Okay.
So it's the same as this counts the same as the Volt for California. You get the big tax rebate, but you don't get the white tag.
Okay.
You get the green tag. It was interesting. It was a super fun car to drive. The suspension is really, really rough compared to, say, a Leaf or the Fiat 500e even, which rides like a station wagon. This rides much more like a sports car. It's bumpy when you hit road. It doesn't absorb bumps.
I don't mind that.
The steering is really tight. Like, so you are actively controlling it inside the lane the entire time. Tends to drift more than, say, my Escape.
It has active cruise control. Is that right?
The active cruise control was really interesting. I'd never driven a car with that before. So it uses an optical sensor on the front, a camera mounted on the front, and basically when you're driving on the freeway or in stop and go traffic, it detects cars ahead of you and maintains the distance that you set between you and them.
Stop and go traffic?
Stop and go traffic.
Now, this is actually news because last I heard that was only available in Europe.
So with this, you set the cruise control at whatever the speed limit is. Also, the car always knows the speed limit. That was really weird for me, but it pulls it from the map data.
Oh,
really? It just knows, okay, when you cross a speed limit sign, like half a second later, the little doober on the console says 25 miles an hour now.
Because the Tesla pulls it from optics. It can see road signs.
Oh,
maybe
this is pulling from optics too.
Yeah.
That would be crazy. Wow. But it's not, because when you're on 280 and you're on the elevated part of 280, it gets confused. So it doesn't. I assume it's coming from GPS.
Okay. But tell me, so the adaptive actually works below 30 miles an hour?
Yeah.
Dude.
So
street, like you coming up from Pacifica.
I drove up 19th without ever touching a pedal.
Oh, it's weird.
It was scary. This
Faith.
is a little scary, right?
Put faith in the car.
You're always ready to mash the brake, but it will roll up to a stop. It doesn't quite stop, but usually it coasts and leaves enough rolling time that it takes off. You take off beforehand. So once it comes to an actual stop, like if you're going up a slight incline or it's flat and it actually does charge itself to a stop, then it'll sit for a few seconds and the cruise control light goes from green to red. If it goes from green to red, you have to hit resume or touch the gas for it to re-engage and take off again. So if you sit for too long, it's like 3 seconds or 5 seconds or something like that. Then it won't take back off.
Weird.
But as long as it keeps rolling, you don't ever have to hit the gas, and you can adjust it. Like the controls on the wheel are clearly designed to take advantage of that. Like there's a rocker on the wheel that lets you set 1 mile increments on the cruise control. So like they very clearly want you to not. To use this in situations where keeping your foot on the gas constantly would be an annoyance.
It doesn't stop at stop signs, right?
It doesn't stop at stop signs. You have to do that.
But it'll stop if a car is in front of you that is stopped in the middle, like in the middle of traffic.
In the middle of traffic.
That's amazing.
If a car pulls in front of you, it'll slow down and make the gap.
How much gap does it leave?
It depends. You can. There's a button to make it bigger or a button to make it smaller. The iconography on those buttons was a little sketchy.
And it's comfortable for you as a passenger. The start stop.
Yeah, it's a gentle start stop. So the thing I found is that to get the optimal mileage out of it, using that cruise control as much as possible, it helped me learn because it hits the acceleration profiles that are the optimal acceleration profiles, and same thing on the deceleration side. When I was using that most aggressively, I got the best mileage out of it.
If you were to own this car and you did this, you'd experience this for a month, would you become comfortable enough to simply glance up to steer now and then and use your phone while you were driving?
Fuck no.
Are you sure?
Absolutely positive.
All right, good.
I don't use the phone. I'm really aggressively anti-using phone in the car.
Yeah, but you've never had a car that can practically drive itself.
So here's the thing. It's the places where that failed, like driving up my street in Pacifica, which is a two-way street. Traffic's coming in. When you come around a curve, occasionally it'll pick up a car coming in the other direction as in your lane and slam on the brakes for no apparent reason.
No way.
You constantly have to be on guard with it. This is not a substitute for paying attention while you're driving.
Good.
The other thing it does is a self-park.
Yes.
So we tried this. I tried this probably a half dozen times. Of the half dozen times, it failed 3 times.
Failed how?
One time it ground the rims up into the curb real good. One time.
Sorry, BMW of San Francisco.
Yeah, sorry, BMW of San Francisco.
It was kind of scary.
They didn't notice. It made a really awful sound.
Awful. And it was a generous spot.
You know the sound that your 3D printer makes when it hits the end of a rail and keeps trying to drive? It was like that, but with a car. It was super, it is. So where the cruise control was something I'd actually use, I would never, ever use the auto pay park stuff.
Interesting.
On my own car. I'd use it on somebody else's car all the time. But it's as fascinating as it is to watch the wheel turn by itself and if you can't parallel park a car that's 18 feet long or however long that thing is, you shouldn't be allowed to drive. Parallel parking is the only thing about driving that if you always follow the instructions, it works every time.
And it has a backup camera, right?
It has a backup camera.
Has not only has a backup camera, but it also has a dynamic camera, dynamic sensors.
Sonar, yeah.
Where it'll give you like a wave map of like distance.
That's cool.
It shows poles even, which I haven't had in a car.
It doesn't
before.
have the cool top-down camera.
Yeah, where it looks like a bird's eye view of your car.
How does that work?
We talk about this. The Infiniti has it. I think BMW even has it, where it uses really wide-angle cameras.
Oh, that's right.
On the side mirrors in the back, and then distorts it, so it looks like the top-down look. And that's magic. Self-driving cars. Elon Musk did talk about this recently, and it's something that I was thinking about. Google obviously testing self-driving cars. One of the biggest hurdles, because there's so many unknown variables, and I think there's a story talking about not only self-driving cars will work when the cars and the cloud has information not only about rules but also the actual area you're driving in, height of curbs and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But the margin for error on self-driving cars is almost zero. And that's not how
Especially as
evolution-
other people are driving, as you're driving with real people.
Even if you're driving by yourself and there's other variables on the road, your expectation of a self-driving car, you give it zero margin for error because any ding, anything is unacceptable.
Yeah.
Which is a purely human desire.
But if I just spent $100,000 on a car and
Well,
I let it
exactly,
self-drive and it
because-
crashes into something, I'm going to be fucking pissed.
Right, or even a slight ding or a scratch.
Yeah.
But in terms of evolutionary algorithms and programming, that's not how those things work.
Right.
Things get smarter through trial and error, through making mistakes, and there is usually a margin for error that you can accept in order to improve. You can't expect to be perfect on the first try.
But I think that's where the adaptive cruise control and stuff like that's the trial and error part, right?
But that's stepping up in terms of a capability. But
What do you
there
think?
is-
Are you saying we'll never have self-driving cars?
No, I'm saying that one
Norm
of
is
the
anti-self-driving
one of the
car.
big hurdles of self-driving cars is that humans
Yes.
expect perfection.
Yes.
And are very little tolerance for even smallest problems. But I think that in order for us to teach AI to get to that perfection, you need to accept some problems
I mean, that's
initially.
why Google is approaching 1 million miles driven and all that stuff, right?
And I'm sure those cars have had plenty of small things, but their threshold for acceptability has to meet the human threshold, which is perfection, which is no dings, no.
Yeah.
Do you think that Google has little cards they put under your windshield wiper if they tag your car on the street and it's like, hey, sorry, we tagged your self-driving car. Here's a card. Go to this URL, put this code in. It's good for $10,000 to fix your busted car.
Yeah.
Anyway, the i3 was super interesting. We did a video. Norm, you rode in it. You thought it was a little bit of a bumpy ride. You weren't super comfortable,
I
right?
don't like riding in BMWs.
Just because of the tight suspension?
I think as a passenger, it sucks. I think it's not as comfortable as I prefer.
It's not like driving a living room, like a luxury sedan.
Yes.
Jeremy, you going to do the extended test drive?
Once I can charge it home.
Okay.
I read a review of it where the guy couldn't charge it home, and
Yeah.
I just, what are you even thinking doing a review when you can't charge the
Well,
car?
I plugged
at home?
110. I plugged into the
He
wall.
couldn't even do that.
Well,
Like he had
you
to park
shouldn't
on the
have had
street.
it, yeah.
Exactly. So I mean that's the position I'm in. I can't even do 110. So once I can, absolutely.
And if you want to find out, you can, if your local dealer supports that, you can go to BMW.com and there was an extended test drive button on the page for the San Francisco dealership. We also, Norman, you and I spent a good 30 minutes yesterday looking at the Force Touch trackpad. We're going to have a video for that tomorrow
On your new MacBook Pro.
on the new 13-inch MacBook Pro.
Will has
Retina.
the MacBooks, the new MacBook, the MacBook Pros and MacBook Air 13 and 11 were upgraded to Broadwell.
Uh-huh.
So new processor and also bigger trackpad.
Is this bigger? Is this bigger?
No, I guess the
than Jeremy's?
MacBook is bigger. The MacBook is bigger.
It looks
Yours
the
is
same size.
but you have
Yeah.
Force Touch. So only the MacBook has the bigger trackpad.
Yeah, I don't think they changed the chassis of the Air or the Retina.
So the trackpad has, like we alluded to earlier, pressure sensitivity, two levels of clicking.
and it doesn't physically click.
It doesn't physically depress,
Depressed.
So this is the amazing thing.
but it feels just like a click.
I don't believe it.
I could not. We spent 5 minutes trying to look, like putting our eyes up close to the trackpad because we felt like it was clicking. Like, is it actually clicking, depressing down? If you take any, my MacBook, your MacBook, when you press it down, you can see the trackpad depressing.
It moves.
It moves down.
Yeah.
This, we thought it moved down. We were convinced it moved down.
Your finger thinks that it moves.
but it doesn't.
There's absolutely no movement. The thing that's amazing about this to me is it means that Apple must have spent a phenomenal amount of money to replicate the feeling of movement in a device that doesn't move.
I'll be the judge of whether I think my finger moves.
I'm going to go ahead and tell you, take your headphones off, walk over here, press
boy.
the click.
Here we go.
This is some great audio. Jeremy's walking around the table. He's going to touch my laptop. Just give it a click.
That's great. No, that's good. It's not moving.
It does not move.
But you think it moves.
That's nuts.
And then you can push it down one more time, push it down, and then push it down again.
Oh, wow. It's not moving?
It does not move. This is the reaction everybody has when we do this.
Because the fear is, they got rid of the clickiness. It's just going to be
It's
a vibration or something. But I think
I concede. That's amazing.
it must be like the linear actuators in
In the watch.
the watch. I know
or
I
something,
fixed
a
it.
similar technology, yeah.
I fixed it at a teardown, and the watch actually does not have the pushback.
Oh,
It's
okay.
just the 2 levels of sensitivity.
What's the pushback?
So the haptic. So the way it simulates the click is that it's instead of you hitting a resistance by moving, depressing the click, the pad, it's pushing a motor up against you.
I see.
There's electromagnets that trigger basically and make it bounce a little bit.
That's neat.
I can't imagine how much money they spent to mimic the feeling of the physical trackpad.
Maybe it was an easier problem than, I mean, who knows? The point is that it's convincing.
It's actually better because you can press anywhere.
Yeah, like that's the thing that's neat is you get the click of the top corners as well as the bottom corners.
Yeah.
I was like, it was the kind of thing that when I took it out of the box, I set it up and I was like, oh, this feels pretty good. I'll look at it later. And then kind of just forgot that it wasn't the one that moves.
We thought they got the wrong one.
Yeah. Norm
had
did
to check.
literally. He was like, are you sure you didn't
sure
buy
you
the
got the-
2014 one, you dumbass?
And then look, it's early 2015. So there you go.
It's pretty amazing.
Don't fear. No fear of the Force Touch trackpad.
Yeah, I'm sold as a result. Do we want to talk about Gear VR some more, or you feel like we're good on that?
You guys did a 50-minute video on that.
Yeah, I think
You should go watch the 50-minute video.
Yes, we'll say that Gear VR. One of the things that I want to correct, it does run 60 hertz, and this is the thing that has asynchronous time warp, which is the reason it is smoother than DK1.
Yes. Doesn't have low persistence.
It doesn't have low persistence, which is 75.
Which one is asynchronous time warp?
Asynchronous time warp is where they use the GPU to warp. So you get information from the movement. That information gets sent to the renderer and the computation. The renderer pushes out an image, but by the end of that cycle, your head may have moved slightly
Gotcha.
more. And so they take that information again and do a very simple distortion,
Like a perspective warp?
a rotational warp of the image to compensate for that, to make it, to give you a more updated frame, to reduce jitter. It doesn't have the low persistence of the flickering, but it is smooth because of that, and because it's only rotational movement. That's why asynchronous time warp works.
The async time warp was Carmack's first contribution to Oculus.
Do we want to talk about Teensy, or we want to hold that until we're ready to talk about the project that you did that work for?
No, we can talk about it because I'm working on it for other things.
Okay.
It's basically it's an Arduino-like microcontroller. People who are into Arduino already know about Teensy. So Teensy 3.1 is an ARM M4 ARM Cortex M4 based microcontroller that costs $20, which is about the same as an Arduino Uno.
Right.
But it's infinitely more powerful. It's got
more registers, more memory.
a ton of RAM. It's got I want to say 64K of RAM, 256K of flash.
You're never going to need more than 512K of RAM, you know.
Runs at 96 megahertz. The Arduino runs at 16. It's very, very powerful. Most of the Arduino libraries are compatible with it. I've been using the Teensy 3.1.
It has a lot of headers too, right?
Exclusively. Has a lot more headers. It's a great platform. It's also teensy. Now that's already a good deal, but the guy who makes that is quite smart, and he made a ARM M0 based version of it, which he's calling the Teensy LC for low cost. It only costs like $12.
Wow.
And it runs at 48 megahertz. It's not as fast as the 3.1, but it's nuts cheap. I mean, I'm going to use this for the controller board if I do a revision of the game frame, because there's no reason not to. I couldn't make something this cheap.
Can you do wireless and stuff with that as well? Is it powerful enough to do that?
You'd have to hook it up to something that does wireless.
Okay.
But Wi-Fi chips aren't that expensive. But you can also, there's also there is one that has Wi-Fi embedded on it.
Spark.
Yeah, thank you. The Spark Core was, I want to say like $30 or $40.
It was $50 when I bought it, but I think it's gotten cheaper.
So yeah, they just released a revision of their tech that's actually more powerful and half the price. So that's now I think $20 for a Spark. It's coming out later this year.
The only thing that was frustrating to me about the Spark was you had the easiest way to get code on it was through the web interface, which meant that there was always it wasn't as instant as mashing the upload button in Arduino and it just going up. You still had to.
They have a web-based IDE that they like you to use.
Yeah.
And it took a long time, but I think they've actually improved the localized development tools.
Okay.
So they've fixed that problem. In any case, the Teensy LC is the cheapest and most bang for your buck of an Arduino compatible microcontroller, and it just came out last week, and it's phenomenal. I mean, it's great. So I'm super happy with it.
Does that extra perf let you do stuff like sound easier than it is on Arduino?
With the 3.1, you would want the 3.1 if you're going to do serious sound stuff, because the same developer actually made a soundboard that mounts onto it and does 44 kilohertz stereo quality, 16-bit sound.
Cool.
I mean, CD quality. So and plus you can actually do sound output from the actual pins of the TNC 3
Really?
without the soundboard.
So then you have to run it through an amp or something, right?
Yeah, you would need to run it through an amp, but it's got the DAC embedded on board.
That's crazy.
And it's pretty good. It's like 16-bit or 12-bit software. Or it's 12-bit sound. It's not 16-bit sound, but it's quite powerful.
Sounds like a bad Skype call.
Probably better.
Okay. The last thing I want to talk about is Inbox for Gmail now supports Google Apps for your domain, which meant that I've been able to actually use it because most of my Gmail account is for personal stuff, and I never really use it for any substantial amounts of email. I really, after a day, I'm a fan of what Inbox does for mail management.
Good.
I deleted it after a month. Couldn't do it.
The thing I like is it lets you group and get rid of massive quantities of email in one swipe.
Yeah.
So like it sorts stuff into the promotions and social and forums and all that stuff. Then you can either remove the things that are actually good, sweep them away and spam everything else, which is letting me mass delete spam in enormous quantities.
Yeah. It also snoozes messages, which keeps your inbox clean if you're trying to keep zero inbox.
Yeah.
The illusion of zero inbox.
Yeah, I guess it is an illusion, but it works for me.
Yeah, I'm pleased with it so far. I'll report in after I've used it some more. Like I said, I'm only a day in at this point, but I was really pleasantly surprised by how usable it is.
Have you tried the calendar app?
I have tried the calendar app.
Same UI.
I like Fantastical better still.
Yeah, it's quite different than Fantastical.
Yeah, I think Fantastical is like I love the way Fantastical works. I actually use it on the Mac and on the phone and tablet. It's really good.
Yeah.
Norm, anything else for you?
We did a bunch of stuff, but we can talk about it.
We'll talk about the unicycle more next week. And light bulbs next week as well, probably. We have a couple of good questions, so I'm going to play some music. We'll take some questions and then call it a show.
Emails?
Well, but we do the other one.
Emails.
'Cause it's, we don't do emails. We do
Emails.
No.
Questions.
Boom.
If you have a question for This Is Only a Test, the email address is podcast@tested.com. Please keep your questions brief and on the point. The first question comes from Paul. He says, "Hey guys, I'm a huge fan of Tested and I'm particularly interested in your videos on virtual reality. I think perhaps it's the most exciting emerging technology at the moment and has the potential to revolutionize more than just gaming. I read an article that Will wrote about how VR, when done effectively, tricks the primitive parts of our brain into believing that virtual space is real, thus creating the experience desired. My question is, has anyone considered the possible ramifications of tricking our brains in such a way? Could this potentially have any adverse psychological effects? And is it something that should be looked into in more depth? Do you think people will be addicted to VR?"
Yes.
We can't be afraid of every new technology.
I think we should be afraid of everything, Jeremy Williams.
People will be addicted and can get addicted to all sorts of things, and I think VR is no different. Maybe it's more susceptible, and I think you can definitely, while you are in it, you can be immersed to a point where you
forget to eat.
You forget about you lose sense of some of the outside world, but the moment you take it off,
maybe your own personal physical health.
But the moment you take it off, I think the world comes back to you instantaneously,
and you start crying.
I don't think you start crying.
You're in a room filled with feces and wireless controllers. Yeah. Your adult diapers have overrun. It's Tuesday and you thought it was Sunday afternoon.
Just as there are people willing to go to Mars, lining up ready to go to Mars on a one-way trip in order to do that for science, I am ready to commit myself to VR testing.
One-way trip to VR.
To see to test the limits
goodbye to your children.
of addiction.
It's good. It's good. We'll get the couch and the Soylent ready for you, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Bring it.
First one in.
10% of those demos will be really nauseating.
So somebody else had asked a question on one of the message boards about whether we felt like, because last week when Gary was here, we talked a lot about being not present and smartphones. And then we talked about VR at length, and we're like, jack us in, we'll tune out of the real world forever. Do you? I don't know how I feel about that yet. I feel like VR is a more kind of situational thing, whereas the phones are omnipresent, and that kind of changes it. I don't expect to be walking around the real world with VR goggles on at any point in the future.
That's more AR.
Yeah, but even then, I don't see that impacting. Like when I was wearing Google Glass all the time, I wasn't always looking up and to the right when I was talking to people.
That's because it was only in part of your.
That's
Google
true.
Glass
It wasn't. It doesn't obscure my vision. That's true.
I mean,
the good, like if they think Ready Player One is the great VR book. In my opinion, the great AR book is Freedom TM, which is the follow-up
The Daniel
to Demon.
Suarez thing.
Have you read that?
Yeah, I did.
So but what they were wearing basically like Oakleys, and
Yeah.
it was completely augmented reality, and they could scan the world in front of them. Everybody wore them.
And if you imagine, whatever Magic Leap ends up being, or HoloLens getting to a form factor where it is just glasses, then it is omnipresent like smartphones.
Yeah.
Werner Vinge wrote a book. I think it was Werner Vinge about AR set in San Diego. I'll keep looking for it and see if I can find the name. But
Did you see the Black Mirror special?
no, I haven't
Christmas
seen it yet.
special?
Is it about AR?
I mean, there's a lot of Black Mirror that has to do with AR stuff. Like
I still
contact
haven't
lens
watched
AR.
it.
You got to watch it.
I know. You say that.
Little prescient things.
By the way, Ernie Klein's book, the follow-up to Ready Player One, was announced.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's not a sequel, and I think it's called Armada, and it's coming out in, I want to say, June or July.
So the Werner Vinge book that I was talking about, it's called Rainbow's End. It's about AR in a world where your glasses don't just overlay a different overlay things on top of the reality that's already there, but they actually are capable to the point that they can replace reality. So you see, if you're participating in the fantasy AR, then you'll see. The library at the university will look like a castle instead of like a library at the university. Even the science fiction one will look like a dystopian Blade Runner thing, but it overlays theme-specific stuff on actual real-world structures.
That's cool.
It was a really good book. If you want to read an AR book that's dope, you should read that. It's really good.
That sounds great.
It's called Rainbow's End. Rainbow's End by Werner Vinge. It came
Everyone
out
can
in
see
2006.
their own perception, their own interpretation,
Exactly.
suited to them.
Yeah.
That was the whole crux of the book. It was fascinating.
Or share one, I imagine.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you subscribe to other people's views, literally.
That's cool. I always wanted to be able to subscribe to other people's headphones. Like if you walk by someone, you
Yeah.
see somebody on the bus, I want to hear what they're listening
Wasn't that a Zune feature?
Yes, squirting.
Yeah, you could
Oh,
squirt.
squirting.
That's what squirting was.
Oh, man.
that's
It's
terrible.
what it's Last FM, or not as Last FM. It's a turntable.fm for the real space, for Meet Space.
Yeah.
Meet Space turntable.
What happened to Turntable FM? Did it go away?
Like went away, licensing fad.
Jacob,
Yes, you're right. It's appealing. It's the same thing with driving cars. Like if you pull up someone at a stoplight, you hear exactly what they're hearing,
Yep.
and not over.
Well,
you can tune into that.
there's a thing called radio.
Well, I mean, radio is because limited channels.
Right.
You have that shared experience, but in on-demand streaming, infinite song selection, what's the way to do that?
Yep.
NFC, RFID, local Wi-Fi. I'm sure Samsung will have something.
Ernie Klein's book comes out July 14th. Armada.
July 14th of this year?
Yes.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Brian writes in and says, hey guys, what are your thoughts on keeping boxes for tech items and small collectibles like cool desk figures or whatever? Nothing actually worth money. In my mind, I always think I need to keep them in case I want to resell them, but I almost never resell them and usually just give old tech to friends and family members. I've got a router box sitting here on my desk and I can't decide if it's going in the closet or to the recycling. At the same vein, what do you guys do with your manuals for your devices? I have a binder with separate sections for tool manuals and tech manuals, but more often than not, they're never used and instead just exist to be kindling in the event my house catches fire. Do you guys keep boxes and manuals?
I used to keep boxes, not never for tech. Tech boxes are the first thing that go.
Mash them flat and chuck them in the recycling.
Yes, and I value tech companies who package not with styrofoam but with clever cardboard cutouts.
Yeah.
Especially for like monitors and other big things. But I used to save some boxes, and now I save no boxes. Boxes are the worst.
The only thing I save are boxes for things that are hard to move. So like my KitchenAid stand mixer, I keep the box for because packing that like with styrofoam or bubble wrap or something is going to be really, really a pain in
I
the
just
ass.
threw away my KitchenAid stand mixer
I
box.
kept my boosted board box, but most boxes I get rid of.
Yeah.
And manuals, because they're all better. They're updated in PDF format anyway.
Yeah, and manuals actually keep.
Do you?
Because manuals, I find that, especially for motherboard manuals, I keep all
You
my
never know
computer-
which rev you have, right?
Never know which rev. It's always difficult. If you're doing something like a computer where you don't have, going through a PDF on an iPad or a phone for a manual to find jumper configurations is a pain.
I used to keep all of that stuff, and I throw it so I keep all the bits and pieces that come with my computer that I don't use, like
That's
the extra
never used.
like the extra slot covers and the extra SATA cables and all that stuff, the extra screws that come with the case that you don't use, those all go in the motherboard box. And then there's a place in my garage where motherboard boxes live.
And I used to do that.
That's
now, motherboard boxes, it's a box. That
Straight in
goes
the
away,
trash.
straight in the trash. Everything else is Ziploc bags, Sharpie labels.
I have a box. The other thing is we often get stuff that we have to send back. So I have a box graveyard in my garage.
We have a box
that
graveyard
is-
here.
Well, you don't even want to talk about this one. But yeah, the box graveyard in my garage is for stuff that has to go back at some point, and I just don't have any place to store it. So there's a big giant pile of boxes in my garage. It's a constant source of strife with the missus.
The idea for collectibles and people who are buy figurines, toys, whatever, and think that keeping the box will increase the resale option.
As soon as you open it, it doesn't matter, right?
And if someone wants it bad enough, they'll take it without the box.
Yeah.
The reason to keep any of that box, sometimes the art's nice in the box, and you keep that and cut them out and save that. But any of that packing material.
I just sold 2 iPad minis and a GTX 680 on eBay. And I called up Ship to have them pick it up and send it off. They boxed it up themselves. It's a wonderful new thing.
Yeah.
And I don't
Future.
think, honestly, I don't. I know, like, for people who gift used items, and it's a great thing to do.
Yep.
They like having the original box, and I used every time I buy a new iPad or a tablet, I never open the earbuds because I want to keep them, and that increases the resale value when you have the
Nobody
original
wants used earbuds.
No one wants to use earbuds. If you have all the cables perfectly coiled to get the more new experience, but it's not worth it.
And on that note, I think we're probably done with the show today. If you have a question, it's podcast@tested.com. Please send questions. We love to hear them. Preferably stuff that's not, hey, what should I buy? We like more kind of thoughtful questions. Jeremy Williams, thanks for coming by, as always.
As always, my pleasure.
At Jareware.
Yeah, I'm 20 subscribers away from 1,000.
Nice.
Yeah.
Post something interesting today. I'll retweet it. We'll get you over that hump.
That's very generous.
Every tweet I make is interesting. Will.
I know. Post something that's interesting to me. Post something about me personally that I'll find personally interesting.
I'll do my best.
Okay. Norman Chan, what's going on with you? Anything exciting?
GearVRFace.tumblr.com.
I saw that I was once again the headliner for another VR face Tumblr. So
I created this one, so I get to choose.
those pictures are terrifying.
Don't look into the light. Someone did correctly point out
It's bad for you.
it's because of the way the lenses work and they magnify.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so when you told me to look at the light so you could get a better shot of my eyes?
Well, your eyes are fine.
Well, now, when he was wearing it in the video, you did the same thing. You told him to look up so the camera could see him. So
Well,
the light,
yeah,
so the light
but
was
I
in his
didn't
eyes.
know that.
Well, I didn't know that either. Now we know. Don't put on the Gear VR without the glass, without a phone in there, and then look at the sun. That would probably be
Jesus Christ. No
bad. That
kidding.
would probably be bad.
The little points of light are just etching across your eyeballs. That's body horror, man.
Wow, it's like photoreactive curing.
We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching, and I guess we'll be back next Thursday with another episode of This Is Only a Test. Hey, today's outro is brought to you by Ad Hoc. Here it is. Hi there, I didn't see you.
Tested.
I'm buying boxes of Purell from White Hall Suites. Buck a minute.
Tested.
Bye-bye.